Chapter 684 Unstable Situation. In Blizzard City, people's speculations about the battle spread more and more widely and became more and more outrageous. Because from the heart, no one could imagine that Blizzard City would lose in the battle against Eclipse Moon. And mixed with this emotion, it is not only anger but also panic. How can we protect the safety of the people if we can't even suppress a small Ronin organization? And at this time, another voice began to emerge. It's not that our soldiers are not strong enough, but the commander's wrong decision caused the lives of the soldiers to be buried in vain. The combat effectiveness of the Tianqian team is absolutely trustworthy, but the top leaders forced to start the war in advance without sufficient information collection so that they rushed to the battlefield. Our soldiers suffered from the information gap and lost to the opponent. All this is the responsibility of the command level. Yang Xinxin and the Tianqian team themselves have a considerable number of fans in Blizzard City. Now that this voice appeared, it quickly gained the support of many people. They transferred their anger to the high-level commanders. They believed that no matter what, the commander of the action needs to take responsibility for it. Although such a voice could not be spread openly, almost everyone was discussing this matter in private. Even some people inside the agency were whispering about it in private. The reason was that this matter seriously concerned their survival and dignity. This kind of movement inevitably reached Zhu Zheng's ears. At this time, he was already upset, and hearing these words, his heart became more and more irritated. For several consecutive days, he didn't eat a grain of rice. When he thought of the almost annihilated Tianqian team, including the captain Yang Xinxin, his heart was bleeding. The creation of an investigation team requires too much of their energy and resources. The lack of combat power of the Tianqian team may never be compensated. And now, his prestige in Blizzard City has also suffered a heavy blow. We must find a way to stabilize people's hearts. Then, destroying Eclipse Moon is what we must do. But now, who can he use? The Black Robe Squad has no captain-level alien sitting in, and the Tianqian squad is almost wiped out. The other 4 investigation teams each had important tasks to do and could not come back. Even if he really had to fight, he had to learn from this lesson and use all his strength. He must not underestimate the enemy again. In other words, it would be safer to have at least 2 investigation teams at the same time. At this time of internal and external troubles, the arrival of a person helped Zhu Zheng a lot. That was the head of the Deng family, Deng Yuanbua, chairman of the Deng group. That morning, the sky was dark and heavy snow fell from the sky. Deng Yuanbua's special seat came to the combat command center. This absolute pillar of the Deng family in his 50s appeared in the public eye for the first time after the defeat of the battle. Many people secretly paid attention to his actions. Deng Yuanbua's arrival, is it to ask Zhu Zheng for an explanation or to support Zhu Zheng? His attitude is crucial. Because now the statement of this important figure can definitely tilt the direction of public opinion. And he, who lost his heir, is also the biggest victim of this action. So his words are more important. When Zhu Zheng learned that Deng Yuanbua had arrived, he also showed a serious expression. He asked Yang Xinxin to invite Deng Yuanbua to the office, and the two closed the door and talked for a long time. No one knew what the content of this conversation was. But after the conversation, Yang Xinxin suddenly found that the haze on Zhu Zheng's face had been relieved a lot. He breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Zhu Zheng could cheer up again, which was the scene he most wanted to see. Otherwise, if Zhu Zheng, who was his direct leader, got into trouble, his position in Blizzard City in the future would be difficult to maintain. Zhu Zheng sent Deng Yuanbua away, thought about it for a while, and calmly said to Yang Xinxin, "The house arrest of Jiang Yi and others can be lifted. You call Jiang Yi and Bailey Chongqing over. I have something to talk to them." Yang Xinxin nodded and said yes. He quickly ordered someone to bring Jiang Yi and Bailey Chongqing. Not long after, Jiang Yi and Bailey Chongqing, who got the news, came to the combat center. The two met in the lobby on the first floor. Bailey Chongqing showed Jiang Yi a bitter smile. Jiang Yi understood immediately. At the beginning, the two of them worked together to deceive the Jiangnan district and prevent the district's top leaders from knowing Jiang Yi's strength. But in this mission to encircle and suppress Eclipse Moon, the strength Jiang Yi showed was obviously far higher than the district's expectations. From this aspect, the district will definitely hold Bailey Changqing accountable. It's just that during this period of time, the two of them couldn't talk to each other, even if they wanted to unify their statements. Now that Zhu Zheng called them over, he would definitely ask about this matter. Jiang Yi was fine because he was not from Blizzard City. Even if Zhu Zheng blamed him, he could only scold him verbally, but could not impose any substantial punishment. After all, concealing one's strength is not a fault.
But
Bailey Changqing. Qing is the captain of the investigation team, so it is hard to say what he did. The crime can be serious or minor, depending on Zhu Zheng's mood. Yang Xinxin personally came downstairs to greet the two. He has a handsome face, but looks a little feminine probably because he is a civil servant. But Jiang Yi doesn't like this guy very much, because Yang Xinxin is the kind of person who you can tell at a glance that he is very smart. It is easy to suffer when dealing with such a person. However, Jiang Yi is not afraid of this. On the contrary, he thinks that Yang Xinxin's pretending to be smart is a little funny. A truly smart person is often talented and will not show off his talents. Please come upstairs, both of you. Zhu Shuai has been waiting for you for a long time. Jiang Yi looked calm, smiled and nodded, and then walked over with Yang Xinxin. Bailey Changqing had a complicated face, but now he had to bite the bullet. After a while, the two came to Zhu Zheng's office. Yang Xinxin did not enter the door, but closed the door from the outside. There were only Zhu Zheng and his personal guard Sun Luxuan inside. Zhu Zheng sat at the mahogany table, his hands folded to support his chin. The afternoon light and shadow were a little dim, covering half of his face and Sun Luxuan in the shadow. The atmosphere in the office was a little strange. Jiang Yi thought to himself, there is probably no other reason for him to find me. He must want me to continue to work hard to deal with Eclipse Moon. Although I have no objection to dealing with a Neon Ronin, I am not willing to risk my life. Let's see what he says. Bailey Changqing stood beside Jiang Yi, with a stern face and sweat on his forehead. Zhu Zheng raised his head and looked at them, his mouth corners slightly raised, and said with a deep smile, "You are here, sit down."
yes,
Bailey Changqing said loudly, and it can be seen that he was a little nervous. Jiang Yi smiled and nodded. "Thank you, Commander." The two sat down at the mahogany table. Zhu Zheng's eyes fell directly on Jiang Yi. "Jiang Yi, you have made great contributions in this battle to suppress Eclipse Moon. This is surprising to me. I didn't expect that there would be such a powerful alien in the outer city." He smiled and stretched out his hand to point at Jiang Yi. "You kid, you are really hiding well." As he said that, he glanced at Bailey Changqing next to him. Even our district's investigation team didn't find it. Bailey Changqing felt a little blocked in his throat. He wanted to explain something, but he didn't know how to start. Jiang Yi smiled and spoke to relieve his pressure. "Even a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. I keep some means of saving my life in order to survive well in the end of the world. I hope Zhu Shuai can understand." Zhu Zheng nodded. "You are right. You are indeed cautious enough and able to hide well. This is a very good quality. If you are on the battlefield, soldiers like you are most likely to survive to the end." After hearing this, Bailey Changqing couldn't help but start to complain in his heart. "Didn't you always say that Jiang Yi only knows how to defend and is not good at it, and his style of play is too steady? He puts his own interests first. Isn't he a qualified soldier? Good man. It turns out you change your mind faster than turning the pages of a book." Chapter 685, No Longer in Reincarnation. Facing Zhu Zheng's praise, Jiang Yi acted very calm. Such nice words should not be taken seriously. Who knows what he will ask him to do later? "You are too kind. My strength is still far behind the elites of Blizzard City. Especially compared with professional soldiers, my combat quality is still far behind." After saying this, Zhu Zheng couldn't help but think of the members of the God Squad who died in the battle, and the junior Deng Xintong who he had high hopes for, and his eyes began to become cold. It's better not to mention this matters. The result of this battle made me see many things clearly. Zhu Zheng suddenly sighed, and his eyes became erratic. In the context of the Great Mutation era, the role of ordinary soldiers is getting weaker and weaker. Even in the battle between high-level aliens, no matter how good the ordinary soldiers are, no, even the low-level aliens are almost completely unable to affect the battle situation. Zhu Zheng thought of the members of the God Squad who died in the battle. They were all well-trained, but the ones who defeated them were just those social animals of various professions in Japan. In other words, the advent of a new era represents the emergence of a new form of warfare. This battle has taught all of us a lesson. Only top aliens and intelligence are the two things that determine the outcome of the battle. Zhu Zheng sighed. We were too arrogant before, and we were still immersed in the advantages of having a large number of people and fighting on the home ground. If this kind of thinking is not changed in time, we will suffer a great loss in the future. Jiang Yi listened to Zhu Zheng's analysis and nodded continuously. Of course, the main purpose of doing this is to let the leader know that he agrees with the leader's speech. And Jiang Yi had this concept a long time ago. From that time, the battle against the aliens in Days City began. The Days City troops of nearly 1,000 people, 72 aliens, and 800 elite soldiers could not stop Jiang Yi's spear of destruction from a distance. This is the form of war in the new era. Aliens will become the battlefield leader beyond hot weapons, perhaps second only to the god of death of love. That is the last bit of face in the era of hot weapons. So, Zhu Zheng put his hands on the table, his eyes fixed on Jiang Yi's face. Our revenge will be led by aliens and high-level aliens. I have decided to give you the initiative on the battlefield, so Jiang Yi, I hope you can lead the team to carry out the next mission. The air suddenly became quiet. Jiang Yi remained silent. Bailey Changqing turned his head slightly in astonishment and looked at him, his face full of shock. The encirclement and suppression of Eclipse Moon, such a big thing, was actually handed over to Jiang Yi, an alien from the outer city. To lead? Bailey Changqing couldn't believe his ears. But now that I think about it carefully, Blizzard City has entered a stage where no one is available. The two major investigation teams have been injured and lost their peak combat power. And Jiang Yi, who killed 4 Eclipse Moons alone, has become the most suitable candidate. This is somewhat ironic. Jiang Yi didn't speak because his brain was temporarily down. He knew that Zhu Zheng would let him go to the battlefield, but he didn't expect Zhu Zheng to let him lead the next encirclement and suppression mission. This burden came a little too fast and was very heavy. Jiang Yi is a lazy person, and he doesn't like to lead a team to do a mission, especially a group of unfamiliar people who are dragging their feet. I don't think I am capable enough to take on such a heavy responsibility. You should find someone else to do it. There is no shortage of excellent talents in Blizzard City. Zhu Zheng looked at him meaningfully. You are right, but you have an ability that no one else has. That is the biggest weakness of Eclipse Moon. Jiang Yi looked at Zhu Zheng and had some guesses in his heart. Before Jiang Yi asked, Zhu Zheng explained. Although our losses this time were extremely heavy, after paying the price, we also gained enough information. Not only did we learn more about the abilities of the Eclipse Moon aliens, but we also figured out the most critical person on the other side. Zhu Zheng pressed his hands on the table, his eyes cold. We have been wrong all along. Fengguangyuan Jin is not the core of Eclipse Moon at all. Their core is the priestess with the power of prophecy Mayumi Takeuchi. Jiang Yi. It is indeed like this. It seems that I guessed right. Zhu Zheng continued. We have figured out her ability. He raised 2 fingers. First, she has a certain ability of prophecy, which can help her see into the future to a certain extent. Because of this, they can send the most appropriate person to deal with every action we take. This ability alone has weakened our strength by at least 30%. Even when we used the death of love, we couldn't wipe them out. Zhu Zheng was still frightened when he thought of the launch of the death of love. He let out a long breath. You can imagine that she had already predicted what I would do a few minutes before I had the idea. Jiang Yi's face was not very surprised. He had guessed these things after all. He was closer to the battlefield than anyone else. Bailey Changqing questioned. But this doesn't make sense. If she can really predict the future, why did Jiang Yi kill 4 members? Zhu Zheng said decisively, yes, you got the point. We found that their actions have absolute initiative in almost all battlefields. But the appearance of one person disrupted the opponent's predictive ability. Zhu Zheng stared down at Jiang Yi with burning eyes, as if he had found a rare treasure. As long as Jiang Yi is there, her predictive ability will be invalid. This is amazing. Jiang Yi, this is why I hope you can lead the team and take charge of this mission. Because only you can break our embarrassing situation. Break the opponent's predictive ability. Bailey Changqing stared at Jiang Yi in astonishment. He was also puzzled. Jiang Yi's ability is obviously space. But why can he interfere with Mayumi Takeuchi's prediction? He couldn't figure it out. Zhu Zheng leaned down, put his head close to Jiang Yi, and asked seriously, word by word, Jiang Yi, at this time, I hope you can be honest with us. What means did you use to crack her predictive ability? Jiang Yi sighed and looked at Zhu Zheng's questioning eyes with clear eyes. I don't know. In fact, when I started the mission, I noticed something was wrong. I don't understand why I am special. This is a lie. Jiang Yi had actually guessed the truth of the matter in his heart. The ability to predict, in other words, is a weapon of causality. It relies on a predetermined fate. However, Jiang Yi is a reborn person. Although this may be related to Jiang Yi's undeveloped abilities. But in the original timeline, Jiang Yi should be a dead person, so his future cannot be predicted. And the space he is in has formed a unique field. The ability to predict the future has lost its effect on him. Chapter 686 Tengu. Zhu Zheng continued to tell Jiang Yi about his plan. Eclipse must be eliminated. Only by eliminating them can there be peace and happiness. You and your wife were staying at home, eating hot pot and singing songs, and Eclipse suddenly came. So the days without Eclipse are good days. Jiang Yi still didn't want to take on the responsibility. I still feel that I am not made for this. Leader, please think about it carefully. It doesn't matter if I fail. The key is that I have failed your expectations and brought shame to the Jiangnan region and even the entire Chinese people. This is a big sin. Zhu Zheng frowned and suddenly came to his senses. Jiang Yi was clearly not going to show his hand until he saw the rabbit. If there was no benefit and he wanted him to take on such a big task, he would certainly not agree. Zhu Zheng slammed the table and said, for this operation, I plan to integrate the remnants of the Heavenly God team with the Black Robe team. You will lead the team to form a new team. I even thought of a name. It's called Tangu. Jiang Yi's eyes were wide open. Doglicker? What a good name. Zhu Zheng continued. The purpose of this team is to completely eradicate the eclipse of the Dog Day. He was so excited that he slammed the table. Then he spread his hands to Jiang Yi. Jiang Yi, you will become the captain of this team. In other words, congratulations, you can directly become the captain of the investigation team. Jiang Yi was unmoved when he heard this. He reached out and touched his chin, but this matter has no appeal to me. Bailey Changqing's mood was extremely complicated. Zhu Zheng didn't even ask for his opinion before deciding Jiang Yi as the new captain. In other words, he was the captain for less than a month, and it was gone in the blink of an eye. However, during this period of time, he clearly felt that he did not have the strength to be a captain. And other people never regarded him as a captain. This is a very cruel and realistic world. People without strength are naturally not valued. However, compared to this matter, Jiang Yi's attitude was not surprising to Bailey Changqing. He knew what Jiang Yi wanted. Zhu Zheng and the guard behind him, Sun Luxuan, all showed strange looks. Zhu Zheng asked, do you know what the captain of the investigation team means? In the entire Jiangnan region, the captain of the investigation team has great privileges. Except for a few senior officials, they have the greatest authority. If you become the captain of the investigation team, you will have supreme power and reputation. You can be admired by thousands of people and become a hero. Jiang Yi's face was not moved at all. He just smiled faintly and said casually, I don't want to be a hero. Reputation, power, these things are not what I want. I just want a stable life and rich material and spiritual enjoyment. But I don't lack those things. Sun Luxuan's eyes showed a look of astonishment. He looked at Jiang Yi and felt admiration in his heart. Sun Luxuan smiled and nodded silently. It is rare for this young man to be able to look down on fame and fortune so lightly. Zhu Zheng also fell into a brief silence. His hands were tapping on the table. If Jiang Yi doesn't care about these things, what else can impress him? However, Jiang Yi took the initiative to speak. I still say that if you need my help to deal with Eclipse Moon, I will never refuse this matter. But don't let me be the captain. I prefer to act alone. At most, I will cooperate with you. And I am not good at commanding. Jiang Yi hates to bring a group of burdens. In short, it is very troublesome to have a burden around. So, this is what you think. Zhu Zheng took a deep breath. Jiang Yi did not refuse to join the next encirclement and suppression operation, which made Zhu Zheng quite satisfied. However, he didn't quite understand why young people nowadays are so flat. Why did he not want to take the opportunity of promotion and salary increase, and the opportunity to make a name for himself? Zhu Zheng rubbed his stubbled chin, but, except for you, there is no one more suitable for this position at the moment. After all, if we want to integrate the two major investigation teams, then the position of captain is not something that everyone can take up. The most important thing is that he must have strong enough strength. Zhu Zheng really didn't have a better candidate. Otherwise, he would not have let a stranger from the outer city temporarily take the position as the captain of the Tengu team. Jiang Yi smiled slightly. Anyway, you should think about this matter carefully. I believe there will be someone more suitable than me to take this position. The captain is the scapegoat. If something goes wrong, everyone will have to come to you. Jiang Yi would never do it. Zhu Zheng's expression was a little tangled, but after thinking for a while, he smiled and said, "Okay, I will think about this matter carefully. However, as long as you are willing to join Tengu, it's a good thing. You can also go back and think about it carefully. If you change your mind, this position can be reserved for you, at any time." Zhu Zheng had a gentle smile on his face. This made Bailey Changqing stunned. Zhu Zheng, a fierce tiger who is always known for his majesty, rarely showed such an expression to others. Even Yang Xinxin was often scolded by Zhu Zheng for his lax attitude. Bailey Changqing couldn't help but look at Jiang Yi. There was a faint smile on that bored face. There was nothing special about him except that he was handsome, but it was obvious that his status in Zhu Zheng's heart was different. Jiang Yi leaned forward and suddenly said to Zhu Zheng with a smile, "So, Zhu Shuai, if you want me to conquer Eclipse Moon, should the supplies be unlimited?" He would not work in vain. If he didn't take advantage of it, he would be a bastard. Blizzard City is a big family, and he must take this opportunity to make a lot of money. Moreover, he had not spent the 420 million points in his hand. He couldn't eat it with his pocket, so he wanted to spend it quickly. Zhu Zheng heard this and smiled. "Of course, you can choose any weapon you like. If you like it, you can take it." Ahem. At this moment, Sun Lushuan coughed behind him. Then he reminded Zhu Zheng softly, "Zhu Shuai, he is a space-based alien." Zhu Zheng's face froze, and he immediately felt a chill on his back and sweat on his forehead. Good guy, he almost lost all his belongings in Blizzard City because of his straightforwardness. "Ahem, you can make a list of supplies. I'll have someone send it to you." Jiang Yi sighed when he saw that his plan failed. "Okay, that's fine. But we can talk about supplies later. I hope you can equip me with a batch of top-notch equipment, especially the close-fitting black battlesuit. I want to get a few more sets." The black battlesuit left a deep impression on Jiang Yi. Even without using the acceleration skill, it can improve his physical functions. He was very eager to get it. Chapter 687, I just want to lie down. Zhu Zheng asked curiously, "You want so many sets. Do you want to give them to your friends?" After becoming a member of the temporary investigation team, Tengu, that kind of combat suit must be equipped. But Jiang Yi is not just thinking about himself. There are so many friends in the family, it would be best if everyone can have a set. Jiang Yi nodded. "I should be able to get one set myself, right? I can exchange the others with my points. I wonder if it's okay?" Bailey Changqing heard this, and hurriedly reminded Jiang Yi, "Those things are the highest technical secrets of Blizzard City and cannot be circulated to the outside world." Zhu Zheng interrupted him. "Why not?" Bailey Changqing. Zhu Zheng stared at Jiang Yi with burning eyes. In order to avenge the previous shame, this time to eliminate Eclipse Moon, he can meet almost all of Jiang Yi's conditions. As long as this kid who can crack the other party's causal means is willing to join Tengu. Zhu Zheng is a soldier, but he is also a big man with command talent. He knows how to win people's hearts and make people work hard for him. A very critical point is that you must never be stingy. He crossed his arms. Isn't it just a few sets of battle suits? As long as you want to exchange them, it's up to you. After all, we are all family. Jiang Yi waved his hands hurriedly. Hey, I just said that I will participate in this operation. But it doesn't mean that I agree to join Blizzard City. I'm still used to staying in my nest, Zhu Zheng said with a smile. That's easy to say. Don't rush to make a decision. The most important thing at the moment is to solve the problem of Eclipse Moon. As long as Jiang Yi can help him deal with Eclipse Moon, let him call Jiang Yi Big Brother. Then, if there's nothing else, can I leave first? Jiang Yi pointed to the door behind him. He can't wait to exchange a few sets of black battlesuits. The one he wore before was secretly lent to him by Bailey Chongqing, and he returned it a long time ago. Now he wants to get his own set quickly. Zhu Zheng smiled and nodded. Of course, let Bailey Chongqing accompany you there later. By the way, you can also meet a very special person today. After this, Jiang Yi and Bailey Chongqing looked at Zhu Zheng curiously. A very special person? How special? Jiang Yi couldn't help but be curious. Zhu Zheng said seriously, for this operation, we have learned from the experience of the last time. We will never underestimate the strength of the opponent again, and will use an absolutely superior force to fight against it. That's why I contacted several other investigation teams that were on missions outside. Jiang Yi's eyes condensed. Is another investigation team going to appear? Bailey Chongqing swallowed his saliva. Which investigation team? Zhu Zheng smiled lightly and said, Samsara team. As soon as these words came out, Bailey Chongqing's face suddenly turned from cloudy to sunny, and Jiang Yi could feel his joy from the bottom of his heart. Obviously, there was someone in the Samsara team that he had a good relationship with. Great, if it's them. Our chances of winning would be much greater. Zhu Zheng nodded. Other teams are carrying out important tasks and can't spare time to come back. Only they just completed the task in the north, and they rushed back as soon as they got the news from me. When the time comes, your two teams will join forces, and will definitely be able to wipe out Eclipse in one fell swoop. Zhu Zheng clenched his fists, and under his smiling face, he couldn't hide his terrible hostility towards Eclipse. Jiang Yi scratched his cheek. He didn't know anything about other investigation teams. He just heard Bailey Chongqing's brief introduction and knew the name. By the way, he was most impressed by the Rose team, because the members of that team were all women. Well, I will cooperate with them well. Jiang Yi was a little curious about the Samsara team. But now he was still in a hurry to exchange items, so he said goodbye to Zhu Zheng and left the office. Bailey Chongqing also stood up and wanted to leave. But Zhu Zheng stopped him. Bailey Chongqing. Zhu Zheng still had a smile on his face, but the smile was disappearing at a speed visible to the naked eye and finally returned to that cold and majestic face. General Zhu. Bailey Chongqing swallowed his saliva, feeling very nervous. Zhu Zheng stared into his eyes, and a terrifying light shot out from his brown pupils, making Bailey Chongqing feel a chill on his back. Grasp this opportunity well, and don't let it happen again. Bailey Chongqing instantly understood what Zhu Zheng meant. Zhu Zheng is not a fool to understand that he had teamed up with Jiang Yi to deceive the top leaders of the region. The reason why he was not punished now was only because Blizzard City was in need of people. So give him a chance to perform well in the next action against Eclipse. If he does not seize the opportunity, or makes the same mistake again, then he must be waiting for the most severe punishment of the military court. Yes. Thank you, General Zhu. Bailey Chongqing stood straight, like a thick pillar. When he left Zhu Zheng's office, he realized that his back was already soaked and his legs were slightly weak. Bailey Chongqing let out a long breath. His face was a little pale, but after the cold air in his chest and abdomen was exhaled, his heart was relieved a lot. He has temporarily passed this level. Jiang Yi was not far away, leaning against the wall and looking at him calmly. This matter has nothing to do with him, and he also knows that Zhu Zheng will not punish Bailey Chongqing at this time. After all, it is a time to use people. Are you okay? Jiang Yi asked. Bailey Chongqing looked around, and the nearby Yenyun guards were indeed looking here curiously. He quickly straightened his back and pretended to be calm, and walked to Jiang Yi's side. It's nothing, it's just that Zhu Shuai encouraged me a few words and asked me to work hard, ha. After all, he is a middle-aged man and he still wants to save face. Jiang Yi did not expose him. Let's go, take me to exchange weapons. I just want that black battle suit now, the rest doesn't matter. Jiang Yi had no shortage of daily necessities. In the warehouse of Blizzard City, only the weapons with cutting-edge technology could make him excited. Bailey Chongqing tilted his head and looked at Jiang Yi. Well, the points required for exchange are quite high. Are you sure you want to exchange them all? Jiang Yi touched his cheek and said casually, except for that, I don't need anything else for the time being. Besides, he smiled cunningly, if we really have to encircle and suppress Eclipse Moon, weapons and equipment can be taken by me at will, right? I don't believe Zhu Shuai will be stingy with weapons. Bailey Chongqing was speechless, pointed at Jiang Yi, and couldn't help saying, You are really calculating. Jiang Yi put his hands in his pockets with a little pride. Bailey Chongqing said mysteriously, You, after all, still underestimated the heritage of the region. The real good things are not the things you see. Chapter 688 Gene Medicine. Bailey Chongqing's words aroused Jiang Yi's curiosity. What do you mean? If you have something to say, just say it directly. You know I don't like guessing riddles. Jiang Yi said dissatisfiedly. Bailey Chongqing smiled and said, Indeed, weapons made of adamantium and close-fitting combat suits made of nanoparticle materials are all good stuff. But those things are external objects after all. They can only enhance our basic combat effectiveness. But they can't increase our upper limit. Jiang Yi had already understood something at this time. Are you talking about genetic drugs? Zhu Zheng once used a small box of laundry detergent to fool the aliens in the outer city, saying that it was compound number 2 that could enhance superpowers. Logically speaking, that kind of thing should also be on the exchange list. However, Jiang Yi didn't dare to use that thing easily. The example of Bian Junwu was vivid in his mind. Although his strength was improved to an extremely strong level shortly after the end of the world, it also required a huge price. In the end, Bian Junwu died from the hidden injury in his body. Jiang Yi always suspected that it was caused by the genetic drugs in Blizzard City. Bailey Chongqing nodded. After the apocalypse, the pressure faced by the region was also very huge. At that time, the whole world was in chaos, and all kinds of mutant creatures emerged one after another. Even Blizzard City could not maintain stability. Bailey Chongqing took a deep breath, as if he was feeling emotional. As a region guarding Jiangnan, we must obtain enough powerful forces as soon as possible to maintain regional stability. And genetic drugs, this kind of thing has actually been studied many years ago, and the earliest purpose was to be used in the military field. And now it is used to promote the mutation of aliens. However, drugs are something that must have enough experimental subjects to verify the efficacy during the development process. Jiang Yi narrowed his eyes and stared at Bailey Chongqing. So, you became the test subjects? Bailey Chongqing sighed. Captain Bian was one of the earliest batches. Jiang Yi sneered. Yes, it is safest to let you do the experiment. You must be loyal soldiers with guaranteed loyalty to ensure that you will not go berserk after receiving powerful power. Bailey Chongqing explained. At that time, this was a last resort. We had no choice, otherwise, Blizzard City might no longer exist. For peace, we need to make certain sacrifices. If there is a need for sacrifice, as soldiers, we will never retreat a single step. There was a firm look in his eyes. Even at the end of the world, his faith in his heart remained the same. Jiang Yi shrugged. I am not qualified to evaluate you. You are indeed great. Or maybe you had no other choice at the time. But I only care whether the drug has side effects. If there is any side effect, it is meaningless to me. Jiang Yi would never allow drugs of unknown composition to be injected into his body. Bailey Chongqing smiled. After continuous improvements, the performance of the supernatural drug has become more and more stable. You see, there is nothing wrong with my bodies. He raised his arm and patted his hard biceps hard. Forget it, I don't really need it. Jiang Yi rejected Bailey Changqing's proposal without hesitation. Bailey Changqing came over and put his arm around Jiang Yi's shoulders. I suggest you consider getting a copy of Compound Number 5. Bailey Changqing's expression was very serious, so Jiang Yi asked, "What is that?" Bailey Changqing replied, "Explosive potion. It can give you a very huge power in a short period of time, but after using it, there will also be extremely serious side effects. Usually it is used in desperate situations. You can think of it as a high-performance stimulant." Jiang Yi understood what Bailey Changqing meant. In other words, it is something to save your life, right? Bailey Changqing nodded. I usually carry a copy with me, and if I'm in a desperate situation, I can use it to save my life. Of course, the exchange points for Compound Number 5 are very high, and not everyone can afford it. So, I suggest you exchange for one copy. At a critical moment, it can save your life. Jiang Yi turned his head sharply and stared at Bailey Changqing. What about when we were in Tianhai City? Why didn't you use it? Bailey Changqing also said calmly, if you hadn't given Captain Bien Bingpa, maybe we would have used it. He touched his chin. Speaking of which, Bingpa seems to be more effective than Compound Number 5. It's a pity that this biological catalyst from the body of an Epsilon-level alien cannot be replicated. Jiang Yi was a little tempted. Since there is such a good thing, it would be nice to keep a copy with you. It's better to be safe than sorry. The two got on the elevator and headed for the weapons warehouse of the Combat Command Center. On the way, Jiang Yi asked about the Samsara team again. How strong is the Samsara team? I mean, compared with your Black Robe team and Deng Xintong's God team? If nothing unexpected happens by then, Jiang Yi will cooperate with those people in the 3 encirclements of Eclipse. Knowing some intelligence in advance will be beneficial to the action. When Bailey Changqing mentioned the Samsara Squadron, he smiled more. In theory, the 6 major investigation teams in Blizzard City are of equal strength, and it is difficult to say who is stronger. But if it is confirmed that there are people with prophetic abilities in Eclipse, then it would be most appropriate to dispatch the Samsara Squadron to deal with them. Jiang Yi asked curiously, "Wise?" Bailey Changqing smiled mysteriously. "I can't tell you this, because it involves the abilities of the members of the Samsara Squadron." Jiang Yi smiled. "Actually, if you put it that way, I can guess a little bit. But I won't say it. The names of the investigation teams are not chosen casually, and most of them are related to their characteristics. The Black Robe Investigation Team and the God Investigation Team both have a strong individualistic color. Samsara Squadron. In the name of Samsara. And it mentions the prophetic ability to deal with Eclipse. Then it is probably related to the law of cause and effect. Either it can restrain the prophecy, or it can change the cause and effect. If Bailey Changqing didn't say anything, Jiang Yi wouldn't be rude to ask. However, Bailey Changqing came over mysteriously and said to Jiang Yi, "When they come back, I'll take you to see. I guarantee that you will be surprised when you know who their captain is." "Oh, really? Let's wait and see." Jiang Yi shrugged. He thought, it's nothing more than some celebrity. Chapter 689 Exchange. The two walked out of the elevator, went to the first floor, and walked towards the weapons warehouse at the back. When passing by the door, Bailey Changqing greeted an uncle who was guarding the door enthusiastically. "Brother Wu, are you on duty today?" The uncle smiled when he saw Bailey Changqing. "Yes. Why do I feel unfamiliar with a friend next to you? Is he a new member?" The uncle named Wu Jingheng looked at Jiang Yi curiously. Bailey Changqing smiled and said, "This is a friend from Tianhai City who is assisting us in our work. His name is Jiang Yi." Then, Bailey Changqing introduced the man in front of him to Jiang Yi. "Jiang Yi, this is my old company commander when I joined the army, Wu Jingheng. You can just call him Old Wu." Jiang Yi had long felt that the uncle in front of him looked nearly 60 years old. However, due to the end of the world, people always look old easily, and perhaps his real age is younger. But his body still looks strong. It's just that his hair is a little gray, and his face has a bit more vicissitudes. He smiled and said hello. Hello, Uncle Wu. Wu Zhengheng smiled and nodded. You're so talented to be able to participate in the action in Blizzard City as an alien from the outer city at such a young age. Jiang Yi laughed. It's just SOSO. I'm just an ordinary person. Bailey Chongqing said, Brother Wu, we have things to do, so I'll leave first. I'll treat you to a drink later when I have time. Wu Zhengheng's eyes lit up. Okay. It's been a while since we had a drink together. You have to remember this. The alcohol in Blizzard City is very expensive, and ordinary people can't afford it. So treating people to a drink is a very luxurious thing in Blizzard City. It's no less than treating people to a meal in a 5-star hotel before the end of the world. Bailey Chongqing laughed. Ha ha ha, I won't forget it. The two said goodbye to Wu Zhengheng and walked towards the weapons warehouse. Jiang Yi asked, Are you your comrades in the army? Why do you look a little not quite right? Bailey Chongqing's face darkened. Jiang Yi, guess how old he is? Jiang Yi thought for a moment. Looks like he's in his 50s or 60s. 58. He chose a compromise number. But Bailey Chongqing smiled bitterly. He's only 46 this year. Jiang Yi was shocked. 46? Then he has a head full of white hair. Bailey Chongqing said, I told you. The earliest batch of mutants in Blizzard City, in addition to those who mutated themselves, a large number of them were obtained by soldiers participating in genetic experiments. Relatively speaking, Captain Bian Junwu is a success, and Old Wu is a failure. The experiment had a great impact on his body, causing serious damage to his body functions and even greatly shortening his lifespan. But he didn't awaken his superpowers. The top management took care of him and made him a security guard in the combat center. Jiang Yi remained silent. Blizzard City once had a very difficult and cruel history. Bailey Chongqing suddenly smiled and said, In fact, his ending is not the worst. At least his life is guaranteed. There's still a group of brothers who died because they did not survive the painful experiment. The two chatted and came to the weapons warehouse. Jiang Yi handed over his scorecard. According to what Major Yan Yun said before, Jiang Yi's authority level is very high, and the weapons, equipment, and supplies he can exchange are far better than those of other aliens in the outer city. Bailey Chongqing said directly, Don't you want a black battle suit? Then just tell him directly. He said to the quartermaster who managed the warehouse, Exchange for SLDS-2 type battlesuit. The quartermaster checked Jiang Yi's points and level through the equipment and said calmly, SLDS-2 type battlesuit. Exchange points 50 million points. Requires authority above level A. You meet the exchange authority and the points balance is 420 million points. Then he saw a new item added to the system data. It was a special approval project from the commander's office. There will be a limit on the number of other people who exchange black battlesuits. Even members of the investigation team cannot apply for a second set if the battlesuit is not damaged. But this time, Zhu Zheng specifically approved Jiang Yi to exchange for multiple sets of black battlesuits. There is no limit to the number of your exchanges. How many sets do you need to exchange? The quartermaster asked Jiang Yi. Jiang Yi thought about it and then asked about compound number 5. Compound number 5. Do I have enough authority to exchange it? The quartermaster nodded. Compound number 5. The required exchange authority is A level, and the exchange points are 100 million points. You meet the exchange conditions. Do you want to exchange it? Jiang Yi couldn't help but take a breath. This thing is even more expensive than the black battle suit. Bailey Chongqing laughed. I said, this kind of life-saving thing is not something that everyone can afford. Even I only kept one copy. It's just that after using it once, basically there is no next time. Bailey Chongqing laughed. But Jiang Yi always felt that the smile was a bit bitter, at least for him. This shows how serious the side effects of compound number 5 are. But Jiang Yi still chose to exchange one. No matter how big the side effects are, it is very important to be able to save lives at critical moments. However, for Jiang Yi, its greatest use is another one. He can take it back to the shelter and let Zhou Kuer and Lu Kuran analyze its composition to see if they can produce it themselves. However, since compound number 5 has been exchanged, Jiang Yi has also developed a strong interest in several other compounds. He inquired about the functions and prices of other compounds. The quartermaster introduced them to Jiang Yi very patiently one by one. Compound number 1. The effect is to help people enlighten their superpowers, increase the probability of awakening, and increase the success rate by 20%. The exchange points are 150 million points. Bailey Chongqing reminded in a low voice. It is said to be 20%, but the actual effect is very average. Jiang Yi nodded. Probability, I understand. He has played the card-drawing game a lot in the past. Compound number 2. The effect is to strengthen the ability of the aliens and can help them evolve to a certain extent, but it is limited by the user's own qualifications, and the effect is unpredictable. The exchange points are 120 million points. Compound number 4, a military stimulant, can increase the strength of the aliens by 20% within 12 hours after use. The side effects are significant and may be accompanied by symptoms such as dizziness, vomiting, and dehydration. The exchange points are 20 million points. The quartermaster introduced the other compounds. Jiang Yi keenly discovered that compound number 3 did not appear in the list. Then, what about compound number 3? He asked. The quartermaster looked at him calmly. Compound number 3 is not on the exchange list. Oh, it's quite mysterious. Bailey Chongqing said to him, drugs are developed by scientific research departments. Some medicines have special effects and are not open to the public. Even I don't know their effects, and I don't even know their existence. But these things are too expensive. Jiang Yi couldn't help but sigh. In addition to stimulants, other medicines cost more than 100 million points. He thought that he had 420 million points in his hand, so he should be able to spend them ruthlessly. He didn't expect the reality to be so cruel. Bailey Chongqing winked at him. If you join the investigation team, you can become a formal member, and these things have internal discounts. Jiang Yi suddenly realized. The reason why these things are so expensive is that they are open to the outside world. Ordinary soldiers, civilians in the city, or aliens in the outer city have to pay a higher price to exchange. And special forces such as the investigation team and Yanyan have more friendly prices. There is no way it is normal for people to have an internal price for their own things. Jiang Yi quietly asked, then you help me exchange, and I will transfer the points to you later, okay? Bailey Chongqing smiled awkwardly. The exchange of such special items is registered, and it is not very rational to do small tricks. Jiang Yi spread his hands helplessly. He waited again, and finally decided not to rush to exchange the black battle suit for the time being. Anyway, when carrying out the mission later, Lao Zhu would never be stingy with a set of battle suits. He wanted to exchange these drugs back first and give them to Lu Karen and Zhou Qir for research. So, he exchanged for 4 potions, spending a total of 390 million points. He was left with only 30 million points. Although it was not a small amount, he could get a lot of ordinary food and weapons by exchanging them. But Jiang Yi didn't lack those things, so there was no need to buy them all. Chapter 690. Reincarnation Team. After Jiang Yi exchanged the things he wanted, he thought about going back to Tianhai City first and handing these drugs to Lu Karen and Zhou Qir for research. Tianhai City is not far from here anyway, and it will take less than half a day to go back and forth. However, Bailey Chongqing stopped Jiang Yi, who wanted to go back. He smiled mysteriously and said, I think you should meet the people of the Samsara squad first. Believe me, you will not be disappointed. Jiang Yi raised his eyebrows with a playful look on his face. I am not the captain of the dog-licking squad. Even if I want to cooperate with the Samsara squad, I don't need to come forward to do it. Brother Bailey, this captain position is still left to you. Jiang Yi patted Bailey Chongqing's shoulder with a smile. Bailey Chongqing smiled bitterly and said, Do you think I don't want to? But if you are not capable enough, it is a crime to take responsibility forcibly. He shook his head and even felt a little regretful for his greed at the beginning. Except you, no one is more suitable to be the captain of Tengu. Jiang Yi said, Oh? So, you want me to meet the people of the Samsara squads? Not just that. Bailey Chongqing's smile became even stronger. The main reason is that the captain of the Samsara squad is my friend. I hope to introduce him to you. Friend, huh? Jiang Yi curled his lips. Well, in that case, there's nothing wrong with meeting him. Bailey Changqing said, well, you come with me. They will be back today. After meeting him, you apply to Zhu Shui before returning to Tianhai City. Out of respect, he still had to talk to Zhu Zheng. Jiang Yi had no objection. He put the medicine into his own space and left the combat command center with Bailey Changqing. Bailey Changqing's car was parked in the parking space outside, and the two went to pick up the car. But when passing the intersection, they suddenly saw cars passing by quickly on the road. Some people even ran towards Dongcheng happily. Jiang Yi's hearing was pretty good, and he could vaguely hear what they were saying. The Samsara squad has returned victorious. They are truly the pride of the common people, and they have once again completed their mission brilliantly. In comparison, the Celestial God Squad is... Who says that only the children of wealthy families can achieve great things? Children from ordinary families like us are no worse than them. Gao Changkong, he is our pride. I've said long ago that he is much better than Yang Xinxin. Jiang Yi watched a group of people in down jackets running towards E-City. Among them was a group of girls, waving tall flags and shouting vague slogans. It seemed to be something like, I will never forget my promise to you, and I will keep your promise for my whole life. Jiang Yi was a little dumbfounded. At this time, there is still such a powerful fan culture? Bailey Changqing drove out and saw Jiang Yi, who was dumbfounded. He couldn't help but smile and said, how is it? Have you learned something? Jiang Yi pointed at the girl group running over. Don't they need to find a class to attend? They are so free. Bailey Changqing explained, the girls who can run out to greet the Samsara team either have parents who are engaged in high-end jobs and earn enough points to support them, or... Bailey Changqing thought about it and shrugged helplessly. They are just ordinary people, but they go there desperately to chase stars. They are quite adventurous. If they don't earn enough points because of skipping work, they can only sleep on the street, and they won't even have points left to buy food, hot water, and electricity. Jiang Yi looked at their backs as they went away and couldn't help but think of the slogans they recited. Gao Changkong. Could it be that Gao Changkong? Bailey Changqing nodded. Yes, that Gao Changkong. Gao Changkong. This name is almost a household name in Huashu country. He is not a top fan, but an extremely outstanding basketball player. He first dominated the domestic scene and later entered the NBA, playing for the Chicheng Red Suns, playing as a small forward for 12 years, and has 3 championship rings. Jiang Yi turned his head to look at Bailey Changqing in the car. Gao Changkong, is he the captain of the Samsara team? Bailey Changqing nodded, his eyes flashing with the same light as those of the female fans just now. Yes. He is a very remarkable person. Jiang Yi doesn't play basketball much, but Gao Changkong's name is still well known. Basically, anyone who can play basketball will be enthusiastic about Gao Changkong. Jiang Yi couldn't help but sigh. Isn't this a complete winner in life? Whether before or after the end of the world, he is so outstanding and dazzling. Bailey Changqing said, looking at the entire Blizzard City, Gao Changkong is one of the most popular figures. Although compared to the super-rich second-generation Yang Xinxin, his background is more ordinary, and he does not have such good resources. But his influence among ordinary people may be even better. Jiang Yi is not a fan of stars, so it is difficult to comment. What? But it is not surprising that this kind of super sports star is naturally very strong in terms of physical fitness after mutation. Jiang Yi got on the co-pilot very calmly. Bailey Changqing started the car and drove along the highway towards the direction of East City. The further to East City, the more crowded the road became. It is hard to imagine Blizzard City after the end of the world. But Jiang Yi can see the excited and expectant eyes of fans everywhere. His ears are filled with people's praise for Gao Changkong and the Samsara team. He couldn't help but think that this enthusiasm might be related to the failure of the encirclement and suppression of Eclipse Moon. And the top leaders of Blizzard City may also intend to promote this kind of thing to offset the dissatisfaction of the people. Relying on Bailey Changqing's special license plate, the two drove forward unimpeded. As long as they saw Bailey Changqing's license plate, even if they had more people in front, they would take the initiative to make way for them. In Blizzard City, the hierarchy is strict, and it is no joke. The car drove to the city gate, and Jiang Yi finally saw the trace of the Samsara team. The doors of the 2 snowmobiles behind the device were opened, and several team members stood at the doors, cheering and waving outside.
A
staff member of Blizzard City held up a large red banner, which was hung from the 30-meter-high wall of Blizzard City to the ground. Warm congratulations to the Samsara team for their expedition to Biting Lake and their victorious return. On both sides of the road, countless fanatical fans shouted their names with joy and encouragement. The name shouted the most was naturally Gao Changkong's name. Jiang Yi and his car stopped on the side of the road, and Bailey Chongqing told him that he could not go any further. Now it was the home court of the Samsara team, and they had to be more low-key and not steal the show.
Oh.
Jiang Yi responded lightly, but he did not see Gao Changkong's figure, and he should not have gotten out of the car. After a while, he saw several familiar figures. Operations Minister Tu Yunlai and several senior officials around him. After these people appeared, Gao Changkong finally got out of the car. He was tall, and the official data gave a height of 1.96 meters. Jiang Yi looked at him. He had a gentle smile on his face and looked very sunny. He had a strong body and had always maintained a good exercise. He did not gain weight after retirement like most stars. His natural curls fell naturally, adding a bit of West Coast style. Gao Changkong's appearance inevitably caused another round of screams and cheers. Tu Yunlai encouraged Gao Changkong on behalf of Blizzard City and then left, leaving the stage to Gao Changkong and the Samsara team. However, Gao Changkong's eyes fell on Bailey Chongqing's car not far away. The license plate number was very conspicuous, and he recognized it at once. Gao Changkong smiled and raised his hand high to signal Bailey Chongqing to come over. Bailey Chongqing smiled and said to Jiang Yi, "Let's go. Say hello to them." Jiang Yi opened the car door and walked over there with Bailey Chongqing through the crowd. The audience around looked at Jiang Yi with surprise. Who is this person? I haven't seen him before. A stranger face. The one next to him seems to be Bailey Chongqing from the Black Robe team. Alas, the Black Robe team is half-wasted now. The God team is... The Samsara team is still reassuring. Who says that the children of ordinary people's families are not as good as those of nobles. Some people in the city looked at Gao Changkong, who had a sunny and friendly face in the crowd, and felt proud from the bottom of their hearts. Chapter 691 Gao Changkong. Gao Changkong was born in a civilian family, and he was not from the military. It can be said that he represents the counterattack of ordinary people in Blizzard City, and his half-life stories are extremely inspiring. Therefore, he has a high prestige among the people. I don't know how many girls in the city are his little fans. Even many girls said privately that the ideal state is to marry Yang Xinxin and let Gao Changkong be a lover. One is a domineering president with money, power, and good looks, and the other is a white moonlight paladin who can only stand out with warm sunshine. Jiang Yi finally felt the enthusiasm of fans chasing stars. But this is also a good thing. After the end of the world, people are no longer chasing those little fresh meat, but brave and fearless warriors. I don't know if I will have this kind of treatment in the future. He lagged behind Bailey Chongqing by half a step and didn't want to be too eye-catching. But Gao Changkong's eyes still wandered on him for a while. Some people's identities cannot be hidden. When you appear there, it is enough to be eye-catching. Bailey Chongqing came over and smiled and gave Gao Changkong a bear hug. Congratulations, Gao. Did you encounter any troubles on this trip to Biting Lake? Gao Changkong smiled and said, "Fortunately, the creature we encountered this time is very powerful, but it doesn't have much brains. It just has too many subordinates, so it took us a lot of time." He looked at Jiang Yi. "Who is this?" Bailey Chongqing quickly introduced Jiang Yi to him. "Let me introduce you. His name is Jiang Yi. He is a strange man in Tianhai City. There is a long story about him. We will talk about it slowly later." Although Bailey Chongqing's introduction was very simple, there was no trace of contempt in Gao Changkong's eyes. The person who could make Bailey Chongqing drive here must at least be of similar level to him. He is a master. Gao Changkong made such a judgment in his heart. He took the initiative to walk over and stretched out his right hand to Jiang Yi.
Hello, Jiang Yi. I am Gao Changkong, the captain of the Samsara squadron. Jiang Yi glanced at his right hand, which was wearing a black leather glove. Jiang Yi was also wearing gloves, so he shook hands with him. Captain Gao, I've heard of you for a long time. While looking at Gao Changkong, Jiang Yi also observed all the members of the Samsara team. The Samsara team has a total of 9 members. However, the most noteworthy ones are the 2 people next to Gao Changkong. Standing behind him on the left is a tall and gentle woman with thick black hair that falls to her hips. Such long hair is very rare, so it is also very eye-catching. Combined with her beautiful figure and face, it is easy to make people obsessed. On the other side, there is a handsome man with a middle-parted hairstyle and his hands in his pockets. His face is 3 points of wildness, 3 points of coldness, 3 points of unruliness, and 1 point of contempt. Gao Changkong faced the crowd and shouted loudly, "Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We are back safely. Thank you for your concern." There was another round of excited shouting around. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Brother, go and kill Xiao Neon." As soon as this topic appeared, it instantly ignited the emotions of the surrounding audience. Most people are emotional and look down on the country of Neon. Now, seeing that Blizzard City has lost twice in the battle against Eclipse, they are very angry. At this time, they all hope that Gao Changkong can come forward to save face for the Jiangnan region and the entire Chinese race. Captain Gao, kill the little Neon. Fuck them hard. Those little Neon are so hateful. Jiang Yi was speechless when he heard these voices. How can these people understand how powerful Eclipse is? Always being arrogant and looking down on your opponents will only make you fall into the narrowness of self-satisfaction. Weakness and ignorance are not obstacles to survival, but arrogance is. Gao Changkong heard this and his eyes were a little strange, but he did not answer the fans' request, but just smiled and waved his hand. Then he said to Bailey Chongqing and Jiang Yi, "I will go to the headquarters to report the mission to Zhu Shui first. Then let's find a place to have a drink. I have been outside, and I just want to ask you about what happened in Blizzard City recently." Bailey Chongqing scratched his head. "You have returned with a great victory, and the higher-ups should welcome you." Gao Changkong shook his head. "I refused. When the headquarters asked me to come back, I heard something about Eclipse Moon. It is not appropriate to be too ostentatious now, which may easily cause misunderstandings. The Tianxin team suffered heavy casualties. Yang Xinxin died in the battle, and the entire Deng family and the combat center were not in a good state. If the Samsara team celebrated wildly, how could it not make people think that this was a deliberate provocation?" Gao Changkong was very thoughtful and would not make such a mistake. "In this case, let's have a small gathering later," Bailey Chongqing said with a smile. Jiang Yi didn't say anything. He didn't like to talk too much nonsense in front of strangers. Before you know others, talking less can make fewer mistakes. At least you won't expose your weaknesses. Gao Changkong instructed his teammates behind him, especially to his deputy captain, the man with the middle-parted hair, Jiang. He said, "I'll take their car." Jiang stared at Jiang Yi for a long time and nodded. Gao Changkong got into Bailey Chongqing's car. He sat in the co-pilot and Jiang Yi sat in the back seat. The car headed for the combat command center. After the welcome party, the fans returned to their respective jobs. The joy was only temporary and most of the time, they still had to work hard to survive. Along the way, Gao Changkong and Bailey Chongqing chatted very easily. Jiang Yi could see that the relationship between them was indeed good. Gao Changkong asked Bailey Chongqing about the eclipse. Bailey Chongqing sighed. "That matter is not optimistic." He told Gao Changkong what happened, including the failure of the last mission. Gao Changkong also frowned after listening. "Even Yang Xinxin failed?" Bailey Chongqing said, "You come back at this time. If nothing unexpected happens, the mission will fall on your head. You must be mentally prepared." Gao Changkong smiled. His eyes were solemn, but he looked calm on the surface. "We are the order maintainers of the Jiangnan region. No matter who wants to disturb the peace and tranquility of this land, no matter how powerful the opponent is, we will not be afraid to take action." Bailey Chongqing nodded. But this time, the headquarters obviously attaches more importance to Eclipse Moon. The number of people dispatched by Blizzard City will definitely increase. When you meet Zhu Shui later, he will definitely tell you this. Moreover, Eclipse Moon also suffered a lot of losses in the battle. Although their team leader killed Yang Xinxin, he was also seriously injured. Moreover, they lost 5 people in the battle. At this point, Bailey Chongqing raised his thumb to the back seat. And the person behind you is the one who killed 4 members of Eclipse Moon alone. Chapter 692 First Meeting. Bailey Chongqing's words made Gao Changkong turn his head and look at Jiang Yi carefully. He had just come back from outside and didn't know the details of the incident, so he didn't know what Jiang Yi had done. But now, Bailey Chongqing actually said that 80% of the members of the Eclipse Moon War died at the hands of an alien from the outer city. It was inevitable that Gao Changkong was shocked. Jiang Yi waved his hand. Don't be so exaggerated. I just picked up 2 people. Bailey Chongqing sighed. Really just picked up? He knew that even if Kamaya Negemichi and Akutsu Shinichiro, who were killed by Jiang Yi, were in their prime, they could not be Jiang Yi's opponents. Gao Changkong smiled. This is not surprising. My Shenzhou is vast, prosperous, and full of geniuses. It doesn't mean that only those born in big cities or with good family backgrounds have powerful abilities. Jiang Yi remembered at this time that Gao Changkong was also from an ordinary family. These words seemed to have some meaning of mutual appreciation. Several people chatted casually, but due to their military status, Bailey Chongqing and Gao Changkong were reserved. Bailey Chongqing did not tell Gao Changkong that the headquarters was going to form a Tengu team. Gao Changkong also had great reservations about the mission he was carrying out this time. As for Jiang Yi, he was not a person who liked to talk too much with strangers. From beginning to end, he just dealt with a few words and didn't say anything more. After a while, the car drove to the combat command center and Gao Changkong went to see Zhu Zheng. Jiang Yi and Bailey Chongqing were in the lounge downstairs, drinking tea while waiting for him to come out. Gao Changkong didn't stay in Zhu Zheng's office for a long time, because the specific information of the mission was actually handed over to Zhu Zheng before they returned to the city. As a soldier, Zhu Zheng didn't like the long-winded official language. Therefore, they just talked about the content of the mission briefly, and after praising his achievements, they began to discuss the matter of Eclipse. Half an hour later, Gao Changkong came to the first floor and said to Jiang Yi and Bailey Chongqing with a smile, "Okay, the reporting work is over. Let's go have a drink together." Jiang Yi didn't like to join in the fun, but he knew that Gao Changkong's Samsara squadron must be the main force in the encirclement and suppression of Eclipse Moon. Drinking and chatting with him, maybe he could get some useful information. Even if he didn't mention this, it's always right to build a good relationship with an investigation captain. So, he readily agreed. The 3 of them took Bailey Chongqing's car and came to the password bar. As soon as Gao Changkong appeared here, he immediately caused a sensation in the entire bar. Those veterans and even bartenders and dancers showed great enthusiasm for him. "Hey, Captain Gao, welcome back. You must have completed the task perfectly this time. I'll leave it to you to deal with Xiao Neon's matter later. We must fight for our Huashu people." Gao Changkong smiled and nodded to everyone, and then took the elevator to the upstairs box amid the cheers of the crowd. This time, even the general manager of the password bar came out in person to tell Gao Changkong that today's consumption can be waived. You know, this is not before the end of the world. Alcohol itself is an expensive luxury that ordinary people dare not even think about. The consumption of the password bar has always been high, with per capita consumption of more than 20,000 points. Not to mention customers of the level of Gao Changkong and Bailey Chongqing, which often start at 6 figures. So in the password bar, free bills are extremely rare. Gao Changkong smiled bitterly and said, "I rarely received such treatment in the past." Bailey Chongqing smiled and said, "It's because everyone has high hopes for you." Gao Changkong frowned slightly and sighed lightly. In the final analysis, is it because of the failure of the God team that everyone is panicking? The more chaotic the time, the more people expect heroes to appear. At this time, people in Blizzard City are uneasy. Gao Changkong returned with a great victory, which immediately made him the hero expected by people.
After the drinks came up, several people pushed cups and changed cups, and with the effect of alcohol, the topic slowly opened up. The core content of the conversation was actually about Eclipse Moon. Gao Changkong looked at Jiang Yi with a smile on his face, but there was a meaningful look in his eyes. Marshal Zhu has already told me about you. I was also shocked after listening to it. If a person like you appeared in Blizzard City, you would definitely become the captain of the investigation team, or a detachment-level figure in the Yanyan army. Jiang Yi raised his glass to Gao Changkong. That's too flattering. Compared with Captain Gao, I still have a lot to learn. Gao Changkong laughed. You are too modest. The two clinked their glasses in the air and drank half a glass of wine. Bailey Chongqing looked at Gao Changkong with a smile. What else did Marshal Zhu tell you? Is it convenient to tell me? Nothing inconvenient, Gao Changkong said. For example, we want to merge the God Squad and the Black Robe Squad to form the Tengu Squad. Gao Changkong pointed at Jiang Yi. Zhu Shuai told me that he really wants you to be the captain. Jiang Yi shrugged. But I refused. He sighed. I'm not afraid of you laughing at me. I'm just an ordinary warehouse manager in Tianhai City. I don't have the talent to lead, nor do I have much courage. So I'm not a material for managing people in my life. He spread his hands to Gao Changkong. Now that you are back, Captain Gao, this operation must be under your responsibility. Why don't you manage the Tengu squad as well? Gao Changkong shook his head helplessly. This is impossible. If both the Heavenly God and the Black Robe are brought under my management, the top management will not be willing to see this situation. Jiang Yi also realized at this time that the top management could not hope that their subordinates would have too much power. After all, now is the end of the world. The order collapsed, and Blizzard City barely maintained it. It looked strong, but in fact, this rule was not stable. It would collapse if you were not careful. If Gao Changkong really gathered the power of the other two investigation teams, then in the future, it will be difficult for any force in the entire Blizzard City to compete with them. Zhu Zheng and his team's considerations are reasonable. Bailey Chongqing frowned. But now there are not many people in the entire Blizzard City who can lead an investigation team. They all hold important positions and cannot leave Blizzard City. If you don't take the responsibility, who can? Gao Changkong smiled disapprovingly. Zhu Shuai and his team will make proper arrangements. As the gun barrel, all we need to do is listen to the arrangements of the top leaders. Gao Changkong looked indifferent, as if he didn't mind how the upper management arranged it. Chapter 693 Balance. Gao Changkong, the popular captain of the investigation team in Blizzard City, looks sunny and calm. He is elegant and easygoing, and can get along well with many people. When Jiang Yi chatted with him, he felt that this person had a very good temperament. Gradually, Jiang Yi also began to talk to him in depth about some other topics. For example, the tasks performed by the investigation team outside. Captain Gao, I don't know if it's convenient to ask a question about the tasks of your investigation team. Gao Changkong thought for a while and smiled. You can ask and see. Some things are required by the top management to keep confidential, but most of the tasks are actually not very secretive. Jiang Yi put down the wine glass in his hand. There are 6 investigation teams in the Jiangnan region, and they are performing tasks outside for a long time. Even this time, when the neon alien appeared in the area, not all the investigation teams were recalled. What kind of mission are you performing? Is the mission level higher than Eclipse Moon? Gao Changkong thought for a while and replied with a smile. It's difficult to answer this question in one sentence. I can only say that our missions are different every time, and they are varied and strange. He pointed at Bailey Chongqing. Take the Black Robe Squad, for example. They are mainly responsible for the people problem. If there is a large-scale unrest in various cities, they will be responsible for suppressing it. And our Samsara squad has been solving the beast problem recently. Jiang Yi frowned. Suffer problems? This is a bit philosophical. Beast of wild beasts. Beast of alien beasts. Gao Changkong saw the mockery in Jiang Yi's eyes and explained with a smile. You should know that after the end of the world, it will usher in a great mutation era. Not only humans can mutate and evolve, but other creatures can as well. Jiang Yi nodded. Of course I know this. His Huahua and Xingtian's demon dog Lele are all mutant creatures. Gao Changkong said, but
There are fewer mutants in urban areas, and there are few too fierce ones. However, in the mountains and rivers, where wild animals gather, large-scale mutant groups may appear. Just like us humans. The more people there are, the higher the probability of mutants appearing, and the stronger the mutant individuals are. Even in some areas, mutant groups of beasts have appeared. Gao Changkong's eyes became serious. Take Biting Lake, where we are going this time, for example. Many mutant beasts have wisdom, and are even no less than humans. Even ordinary mutant jackals, tigers, and leopards are not comparable to human physical fitness. The global catastrophe is almost a return to the primitive age, and our advantage in weapons has been greatly weakened. This has allowed the beasts to rise. At the beginning, the 5 cities around Biting Lake were all occupied by the beasts. And we, with the full support of Blizzard City, took 3 months to take it down. Jiang Yi couldn't help but take a breath. Isn't this a beast tide? But if you think about it carefully, this is actually very reasonable. After a long period of evolution, humans are no longer suitable for nature. The sudden disaster killed most people directly. On the contrary, wild animals that are more adaptable to changes in the natural environment began to rise. After all, most wild animals are physically stronger than humans. As long as they mutate a little, they will become a tough opponent. Jiang Yi couldn't help but say, "Fortunately, I live by the sea." The seawater near the coast is basically frozen because the salt content is not that high. And even if there are some mutant creatures, they will not be too strong. I am afraid that there are many powerful and terrifying mutants in the ocean. However, those are also creatures in the deep sea. They should not run to the land to make trouble. Jiang Yi asked curiously. Then, the situation of the other investigation teams is the same? Gao Changkong smiled and said, "They all have their own troubles." He didn't elaborate, and Jiang Yi realized that this was a secret that could not be known to outsiders. After all, Jiang Yi is not a regular employee of Blizzard City now, so some words should be kept from him. The 3 people drank for more than an hour, and then dispersed. It was the first time that Jiang Yi met Gao Changkong. He had a good impression of Gao Changkong. He thought that this person was quite interesting and not arrogant. However, they could only talk a little bit, and did not have an in-depth exchange. Jiang Yi called Zhu Zheng and mentioned that he was planning to go back to Tianhai City to meet his companions. Zhu Zheng smiled and said, "Okay, but you have to go and come back quickly. Because after the Samsara team comes back, we will have to launch the next round of combat operations immediately. We can't do without you." Jiang Yi rubbed his forehead and agreed. Then he asked Bailey Chongqing to take him to the subway station and take the subway back to Tianhai City. At the Combat Command Center, Zhu Zheng ended the call with Jiang Yi and looked across with a calm expression. An old man with a face like Buddha was sitting on the sofa. He was drinking tea leisurely. Zhu Zheng said, "Mr. Deng, now that everyone is here, our plan can be implemented. Do you have any questions?" Deng Yuanbo put down the cup in his hand. He looked at Zhu Zheng with a smile on his face. "Have you decided on the candidate?" Zhu Zheng frowned slightly. "Jiang Yi is a very good candidate. I asked for his opinion, but he is unwilling to take on the responsibility of captain." Zhu Zheng crossed his hands on his legs. "His ability is very important for this operation, but I am more optimistic about his ability to block the opponent's prediction ability, rather than combat effectiveness. The captain can be replaced by someone else. In terms of command alone, Bailey Chongqing may be more suitable." The smile on Deng Yuanbo's face became even stronger. "But can Bailey Chongqing's strength convince everyone?" Zhu Zheng snorted. "Bailey Chongqing is at least a deputy captain. Although there is a gap compared to the 6 captains, he is only below them. If Bailey Chongqing is not allowed to take the position, does that mean that all the command power should be handed over to Gao Changkong?" Deng Yuanbo smiled and said, "I know that you can't give such great power to one person, but this time, we in Blizzard City can no longer accept another failure. If we lose again, you should know how serious the consequences will be." Zhu Zheng's eyes became deep. If he fails to Eclipse again, he, the commander of the Jiangnan region, will have to resign no matter what. But do we really want Gao Changkong to hold such a huge power? Deng Yuanbo slowly said, "In my opinion, Jiang Yi is the best candidate. He refused the position of captain because the price you offered was not high enough to impress him. Chapter 690, For as long as the price is fair. Zhu Zheng frowned and said, Isn't the price high enough? I have promised him that he can become the official captain of the investigation team and enjoy the A-level material supply treatment of Blizzard City. And the exchange rights of the weapons warehouse are basically open to him. This is already a very high treatment. If it weren't for the extraordinary moment now, he would not have such a good opportunity. Deng Yuanbo shook his head. Zhu Shuai, you're a soldier, but you don't know how to do business. I have to say a few words in this regard. In business, it is important to take what you need. If you want Jiang Yi to agree to your conditions, you must first provide him with what he needs. Zhu Zheng thought, what does he need? How could he know what Jiang Yi needed? And at present, it seems that Jiang Yi doesn't need anything urgently. Deng Yuanbo smiled and said, Haha, if this matter is difficult for you to handle, why not let me do it? Zhu Zheng couldn't believe his ears. When did Deng Yuanbo become so generous? A meaningful light and shadow flashed across Deng Yuanbo's narrowed eyes. However, if I succeed in convincing Jiang Yi, you have to promise me one thing. Zhu Zheng frowned. This old guy really wouldn't do good things for nothing. What is it? Deng Yuanbo said leisurely. I want Jiang Yi to lead the next operation to encircle and suppress Eclipse. Not only that, but also to spread his reputation. Jiang Yi and the Deng family had no connection. Obviously, Deng Yuanbo didn't do this for his sake. Zhu Zheng instantly guessed Deng Yuanbo's purpose. Are you worried that Gao Changkong will gain too much prestige in Blizzard City because of this matter, and thus affect your Deng family? Deng Yuanbo smiled and didn't answer Zhu Zheng's question directly. Zhu Shuai, I don't think you want your subordinates to be too successful to be a threat to the master, right? Zhu Zheng was in a dilemma. But no matter how you look at it, Gao Changkong is more suitable than him. Although Jiang Yi made a contribution last time, it was only because of his strong personal strength and good luck to pick up Liao Honglei's loophole. But Zhu Zheng was not very relieved to command the team to fight and let Jiang Yi be the leader of the action. Deng Yuanbo smiled and said, Young people may be a little immature in this regard, but we can provide guidance. We need to let young people gain more experience. In the end times, we need to quickly train talents. We need to give young people opportunities. Zhu Zheng sneered. I'm not that old yet, but I can consider what you said. Deng Yuanbo's smile became even stronger. Well, in that case, I'll go and convince Jiang Yi, he said, standing up and preparing to leave. Before leaving, Zhu Zheng suddenly asked behind him, Is your family doing well now? Deng Yuanbo paused. Then he sighed softly. That incident was a big blow to him. Don't disturb him for the time being. Zhu Zheng nodded. Okay. After Jiang Yi met Gao Changkong, he took Liang Yu and Hua and took the subway back to Tianhai City. Tianhai City was still as cold and dead as ever. Nowadays, there are no more than 10,000 people living in this city, which is terribly deserted. Jiang Yi took out the snowmobile and drove them back to the shelter, and then he felt a little warmth of home. They didn't tell anyone about their return, so everyone was very happy to see them back. Fatty Su was playing games in the room. When he heard Jiang Yi was back, he ran out barefoot happily. As soon as he saw Jiang Yi, he screamed and rushed over to hug his thigh. Boss, why did you go for so long this time? Woohoo, I was worried all day when you were not at home. Jiang Yi couldn't help rolling his eyes when he saw Fatty Su's cowardly look. You are still as timid as ever. Nothing happened in Tianhai City. What are you afraid of? Fatty Su wiped his tears and said aggrievedly, although nothing happened in Tianhai City. Didn't H explosion occur over there? He pointed to the direction of Jiangning City. Although they were separated by hundreds of kilometers, the impact of the god of death of love could be felt as far away as Tianhai City. Although Jiang Yi had instructed Yang Xinxin not to tell others about the eclipse, the H explosion could never be hidden. He said calmly, Don't worry, everything is under control, including the release of the god of love. Jiang Yi glanced inside the room. Only Yang Xia and Zhou Haimei were there. Uncle Yu, Zhou Kur, Lu Kuran, and Yang Xinxin were nowhere to be seen. While changing clothes, Jiang Yi asked, "Where are they? Where are they?" Fatty Sue blinked and explained, "Uncle Yu has been practicing boxing on the 3rd floor underground recently. He said that doing so might help him achieve a breakthrough in his abilities." Uncle Yu had gradually felt that the gap between his strength and Jiang Yi's was getting bigger and bigger. If he continued like this, it would only delay Jiang Yi's progress. Jiang Yi didn't say anything, but he felt bad in his heart. Therefore, after Jiang Yi left, his daily training time doubled. Basically, except for eating and sleeping, he stayed downstairs most of the time. Yang Xia brought 2 cups of hot milk and handed them to Jiang Yi and Yang Xinxin to warm them up. And Zhou Haimei also thoughtfully opened a can of cat food for Huahua. Yang Xia said, "We haven't been slacking off recently. I have been preparing supernatural food according to your instructions. And Kur and Shinshin are in their rooms. I don't know what they're doing." Jiang Yi nodded. "I'll go see them." The main purpose of coming back this time is to give those compounds to Zhou Kur and Lu Karen for research. Yang Xia hurriedly said, "What do you want to eat tonight?" "I'll prepare it." Jiang Yi replied casually, "Prepare some according to your taste. Make it rich." He can't stay for long, and he has to go back to Blizzard City tomorrow. And for a long time to come, he will be busy with the matter of eliminating Eclipse Moon. Okay. Yang Xia smiled and went to prepare food happily. Jiang Yi went downstairs to find Zhou Kur and the others. When he arrived outside Zhou Kur's infirmary, Jiang Yi heard a splashing sound of water. He was curious and wondered what Zhou Kur was doing. What was going on? There was so much water. Could it be practicing swimming? Jiang Yi walked over and knocked on the door. "Kur, are you there?" As if frightened by Jiang Yi, there was a sound of something breaking inside. Jiang Yi was also worried and reached out to push the door. As soon as the door opened, he saw a scene that shocked him. Yang Xinxin was tied tightly to a chair, soaked all over, and her cute little face, which was the size of a palm, was as pale as a dead person. Chapter 695 Shinshin Awakens. Jiang Yi was stunned. He didn't understand what was happening. Zhou Kur stood by, covering her mouth in surprise. Her eyes were full of worry, but also a hint of expectation. The 37th experiment, is it finally going to succeed? At this moment, Yang Xinxin's eyes, which looked almost lifeless, suddenly rolled down. She saw Jiang Yi, and a light suddenly burst out from her dim eyes. Just when Jiang Yi didn't understand what was going on, he suddenly saw an extremely strange scene. Behind Yang Xinxin, an angel with 6 white wings and holding a sacred bow and arrow slowly emerged. The holy light illuminated the entire room, so bright that it was even difficult for people to open their eyes. Yang Xinxin was immersed in this light, and a sick smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "Brother, you are finally back." Shinshin's experiment was successful. "Now I am also an alien." After a long time, Jiang Yi finally figured out everything here. Although Yang Xinxin saved her life with Zhou Kur's help and successfully awakened her superpowers, the repeated tortures over the past few days have brought her mental and physical states to the extreme. Soon she fell asleep in Jiang Yi's arms. Jiang Yi put her on the sofa next to him, asked Zhou Kur to change her into dry clothes, and covered her with a blanket for her to rest. At this moment, Yang Xinxin has obviously awakened her superpowers. This is good news. However, Jiang Yi felt a little creepy and at the same time very distressed when he heard Zhou Kur tell about Yang Xinxin's awakening process. Zhou Kur sat next to Jiang Yi and quietly narrated what happened. After a long period of research, we finally found that awakening superpowers is strongly related to people's obsession. When awakening, the stronger the obsession of a person is, the more powerful the power obtained after awakening is likely to be. Lust, hatred, jealousy, greed will all become the power of awakening. So Shinshin rejected Bingpa at the beginning. She hoped to get a stronger and purer power. And the way to obtain this power is to constantly experience death, to squeeze out one's own potential, and to refine the mind in one's heart to the extreme. Jiang Yi looked at the girl lying quietly on the sofa, with mixed feelings in his heart. He covered his head. If I didn't know her too well, I really want to say that she is a crazy girl who would use this method to awaken superpowers. Constantly jumping back and forth on the edge of life and death, 37 times, a full 37 experiences of death. Just thinking about it makes people shudder. Jiang Yi is a person who has died once. He knows how uncomfortable that taste is. But Yang Xinxin, she was willing to reincarnate in endless death experiences in order to obtain powerful superpowers. But now, Jiang Yi still has a little expectation in his heart. What kind of superpowers did Yang Xinxin awaken? After all, the way she awakened is daunting just by looking at it. Jiang Yi couldn't help but think that Yang Xinxin herself is a top brain. If she is paired with a strong fighting power, wouldn't it be quite invincible? Jiang Yi was still quite happy, but he felt a little distressed for Yang Xinxin. Seeing her sleeping peacefully, Jiang Yi was afraid of disturbing her, so he called Zhou Ke aside. Come with me to find Koran. There is something I need you two to help me study. Zhou Ke nodded, and the two came to Lu Koran's studio. Lu Koran saw Jiang Yi coming back and ran over excitedly. Brother, you're back. Didn't you participate in the mission to encircle and suppress Eclipse? Are you not injured? She thought of the H explosion that shocked the world and hurried over to check Jiang Yi's body to see if there were any missing parts. I'm fine. Nothing serious. Jiang Yi saw that she was worried about him, and his heart couldn't help but warm up, and he replied with a smile. In the shelter, the only person who could make him relax and communicate the most, besides Huahua, was Lu Karen. Because this girl's mind was as simple as Huahua's, there was no need to worry too much when communicating with her. Lu Karen patted his chest. After not seeing her for a while, the little girl seemed to have grown up a little. That's great. But what happened to Blizzard City recently? Has Eclipse Moon been wiped out? Jiang Yi smiled and said, We'll talk about this later. Let me show you a few things first.
Jiang
Yi said, and then showed them several drugs he had exchanged. The compounds were in the form of tablets, and they could be scraped off a little bit and studied slowly by them. Lu Karen's ability could analyze the composition of the materials, and Zhou Ke, as a doctor, could analyze the efficacy and side effects of the drugs. Of course, Jiang Yi didn't expect them to be able to copy the drugs. After all, it was much more difficult to create such things than weapons. Bringing them back was just a habit. If Zhou Ke and Yang Xinxin could really do it, it would be the best. In that way, Jiang Yi can solve a problem that he cares about very much, helping Uncle Yu and Fatty Sue to quickly increase their strength. It's not that Jiang Yi dislikes them fighting insufficient strength. It was really that Jiang Yi's own strength was improving too fast. If he continued like this, the gap between him and others would only get bigger and bigger. Zhou Ke took the medicine and asked curiously, What kind of medicine is this? Jiang Yi smiled and said, It's a very expensive medicine. I spent a huge amount of points to exchange it from Blizzard City. He touched his chin. It is said that it is a genetic medicine. They have different effects and can help people improve the strength of their superpowers and even increase the probability of superpower awakening. Zhou Ke and Lu Ke's eyes lit up when they heard this. Actually, there is such a good thing. It's worthy of being the Jiangnan region. It's amazing. Zhou Ke frowned slightly, but the development of medicines is very complicated. Without professional equipment and materials, it's hard to replicate it. Lu Ke pursed his lips and said, My ability can combine molecular components, and the need for instruments and equipment is not that high. But even if you know the composition structure, you don't know the process of refining medicines. This is also difficult to do. Jiang Yi was prepared in his heart, so he was not disappointed. I may face a big battle next. Please help me take a look at its specific effects and side effects so that I can have an idea. As for whether it can be replicated, you should try it more in the future. Do your best. If you can't, Jiang Yi spread his hands. There's nothing we can do. Jiang Yi has never been a person who makes excessive demands. Chapter 696. I want to improve so much. Zhou Ke immediately said, I'll go back to the infirmary later and scrape off a little powder, which will be enough for research. Jiang Yi nodded. Okay, there's no rush for this. According to the information currently obtained by the Jiangnan region, Eclipse Moon suffered heavy losses and has disappeared. It is likely that he is recuperating in secret or recruiting helpers. In other words, Jiang Yi will have a long period of peace. Thinking that Yang Xinxin had just awakened her superpowers and was still resting, Jiang Yi smiled and said, "Let's go eat first. When Shinshin wakes up, I'll tell you what has happened recently." Zhou Qir put her arm around Jiang Yi's shoulders and said with a look of dependence, "Okay, you have to accompany me tonight to talk about recent things. Tonight, Jiang Yi must go to her room and have a good talk." Jiang Yi shrugged. "As you wish." Zhou Qir stayed in the infirmary to take care of Yang Xinxin. After awakening superpowers, there will be a certain period of adaptation, and someone needs to take care of them to avoid accidents. Jiang Yi went back upstairs with Lu Karen to meet the others. Zhou Haimei and Yang Xia were preparing food. A sumptuous, welcoming banquet would take a long time. Jiang Yi met Uncle Yu, who had just come back from exercising and was sweating all over. However, he did not look like a middle-aged man in his 40s. His muscles were knotted, and his arms were even thicker than Zhou Qir's thighs. He was wearing a black sweatshirt and a towel around his neck, wiping his sweat. As soon as he saw Jiang Yi, Uncle Yu's face suddenly showed a simple and honest smile. "Jiang Yi, you're back? How is the mission in Blizzard City? Are you not injured?" Like everyone else, Uncle Yu asked about Jiang Yi's physical condition at the first time. He was relieved to know that Jiang Yi was fine. But then he started complaining again. "I told you, if you need to fight with Xiao Neon, let me go." He patted his chest, banging. Although Uncle Yu is not good at other things, he still has a lot of strength. "At worst, I can trade with Little Neon. At least I can relieve you of some burden." Jiang Yi smiled. Eclipse Moon is not an ordinary Ronin. They are very strong. It is said that when they were in Neon Kanto, they eliminated dozens of Neon alien organizations. Uncle Yu's current combat power makes it difficult for him to fight against Neon members head-on. If the medicine in Blizzard City can really enhance the power of aliens and has no side effects, then it may be helpful to Uncle Yu and Fatty Sue. Jiang Yi muttered to himself, because both of them are aliens below the Delta level. In theory, they cannot absorb the essence of other aliens to quickly improve their strength. However, after the advent of the era of Great Mutation, no one dares to say that they understand mutation. If he said even if it is just a beta-level alien improves his ability to the extreme, what level will it be? Jiang Yi thought about it casually in his mind, but did not delve into it, because he really didn't know enough about this aspect. But with more contact with Jiangnan District in the future, maybe there will be a chance to meet their scientific researchers to obtain relevant information. Jiang Yi collected his thoughts and said to Uncle Yu with a smile, "The war situation was urgent at that time, and the manpower was arranged by the district. How could I just call anyone over?" Uncle Yu sighed, his eyes a little depressed. "I also know that my current ability is far behind yours. Although I am also trying to pick up the skills I learned when I was a soldier, shooting, fighting, and reconnaissance. But the more I go back, the more I realize the horror of aliens. If I meet someone like Yuan Kongya again, it is simply not something that ordinary humans can deal with." Even until now, Yuan Kongya's terrifying ability still left a very deep impression on everyone in Tianhai City and the Black Robe team. That kind of terrifying ability that can make the world pale in comparison with just a gesture can easily destroy a powerful warrior who has practiced hard for 2.5 years. Jiang Yi patted Uncle Yu on the shoulder. There are not many monsters like that in the world, and they cannot be measured by common sense. Everyone has their own strengths. The most important thing is to play to one's strengths and avoid one's weaknesses. There is no need to compare with others. Just like Yang Xia, her ability is only to make supernatural food. She can't be said to be a scumbag, but she can only be said to have no combat power. But she can still play her role. Day and night. Ha ha ha, you are right. Uncle Yu's eyes burst with confidence. "There must be something I can do for you." He looked at Jiang Yi firmly and said. Jiang Yi's heart warmed. "It's something we do for each other." 2 hours later, Zhou Haimei and Yang Xia finally prepared a large table of food. And Yang Xinxin also woke up under Zhou Qir's care. They came to the first floor, and after seeing everyone, Yang Xinxin's face was full of calm. But from the corners of her raised mouth, It is not difficult to find that there is a pride in her heart that is difficult to conceal. After all, she is an 18-year-old girl, and it is difficult for her to have her mind and intelligence on the same level. But it is understandable. Yang Xinxin walked gracefully to Jiang Yi's side and gave Fatty Su the same look without hesitation. Fatty Su ran to the side and sat on the small stool. Yang Xinxin sat down next to Jiang Yi, hugged his arm intimately, and looked at him with a smile on her face. "Brother, Shinshin can help you in the future." Jiang Yi was curious about Yang Xinxin's ability and reached out to scratch her pink nose. "You have always been my best helper." Yang Xinxin smiled and said, "That's different. She doesn't need to hide in the shelter all the time in the future. She can follow Jiang Yi like Liang Yu and Hua Hua and fight with him." Jiang Yi suddenly became curious. Logically speaking, the way Yang Xinxin obtained her ability was also very terrifying, and she went through a full 37 reincarnations of death. But in terms of the degree of tragedy, it is hard to say that she is more powerful than Jiang Yi. After all, Jiang Yi was hacked to death one by one, and then his resentment accumulated to the deepest level and awakened his superpowers. Although Yang Xinxin has experienced the feeling of death many times, she subconsciously knows that this is just an experiment, and Zhou Qier will save her at the critical moment. She leaned close to Yang Xinxin's ear, and the warm breath from her mouth was exhaled beside her crystal-clear earlobe. "What exactly is your superpower? Tell brother." Yang Xinxin's neck turned red, and she lowered her head like a little devil. "Brother, do you want to try it?" Jiang Yi was stunned. "Let me try it?" In other words, it is not a pure attack attributability? Chapter 697 Angel of Desire. Yang Xinxin smiled playfully but said to Jiang Yi gently, "I won't use my ability on my brother." Jiang Yi looked strange. "What kind of ability is it?" Yang Xinxin didn't keep Jiang Yi in suspense. She said, "My ability, I named it Angel of Desire. Its ability is to manipulate people's hearts. Love, hatred, all kinds of emotions, as long as the person shot by the angel's arrow will have such feelings from the bottom of their hearts, and then be controlled by emotions." Yang Xinxin held her face with both hands. Her face flushed morbidly. "You can play with people's hearts at will. What a wonderful ability." Jiang Yi couldn't help swallowing his saliva. The ability to play with people's hearts really fits the heart of this sickly girl. He was also alert in his heart. What if this girl took the opportunity to sneak attack him and made him fall in love with someone or hate someone? It would be miserable. Although he understood that Yang Xinxin would not hurt him. But in the eyes of the sickly girl, good and bad things naturally have different definitions. So he continued to ask indirectly, inquiring about the characteristics of Yang Xinxin's ability. Yang Xinxin did not hide anything from Jiang Yi and told Jiang Yi everything about his known abilities. After listening, Jiang Yi fell into silence for a while. Because the abilities obtained through such a terrifying way have extremely high upper and lower limits. If it falls into the hands of an ordinary person, this ability is quite useless, and even playing with fire if you're not careful. But once used properly, it can create incredible effects at the right time. Sure enough, it fits Yang Xinxin's character. Soon, the meals were ready, and Uncle Yu also took a shower and returned to the living room refreshed. Although Jiang Yi left not long ago, he had experienced so many things that he had the illusion that he had not been with everyone for a long time. This warm scene of a family crowded around a round table and eating lively made Jiang Yi feel very warm in his heart. During the meal, the topic soon turned to Eclipse. Obviously, everyone was very concerned about that foreign organization. After thinking for a moment, Jiang Yi planned to tell everyone the truth about the matter. In any case, everyone must be mentally prepared, because he couldn't guarantee that Eclipse Moon wouldn't appear in Tianhai City. Jiang Yi calmly told them about Eclipse Moon's situation and told them the fact that the Jiangnan district headquarters had failed in the encirclement and suppression. As soon as this was said, everyone's expressions were filled with surprise and worry. Even the people in Blizzard City failed? Fatty Su looked incredulous. Didn't they send out an investigation team? At least it's the same level as the Black Robe team back then. Plus, there are more than a dozen aliens from other cities like you, boss. The 13 guardians of the Jiangnan district, you have basically used all the forces you can mobilize, right? You can still lose. Jiang Yi took a deep breath and shook his head helplessly. I didn't expect it either. Not only me, probably no one could have expected this outcome. Not only did they lose, but they also lost miserably. The god team was almost wiped out, and the captain Yang Xinxin also died in battle. Liang Yu interjected, if it weren't for Jiang Yi suddenly coming out and killing 4 members of Eclipse Moon, this battle would have been a complete and utter defeat. Uncle Yu found it hard to accept. He held his forehead with one hand, his expression extremely painful. Those damn little neons. Are they really that strong? Jiang Yi frowned. In his heart, he was unwilling to accept this. But the facts were in front of him, and you couldn't just refuse to accept it. At this time, Yang Xinxin suddenly said, I smelled a conspiracy in this matter. The table suddenly became quiet, and everyone stopped what they were doing. Fatty Sue put the chicken leg that was near his mouth in the bowl silently. Jiang Yi turned his head and looked at Yang Xinxin next to him. Conspiracy? What conspiracy could there be in such a thing? Yang Xinxin wiped her mouth with a napkin and said in a calm tone, Brother, I have only seen Bian Junwu with the combat power of a captain. And he is Bian Junwu who is seriously injured and will not live long. Do you think a captain level is easy to kill? Jiang Yi shook his head. What a joke. If I don't know his ability, even if he appears in front of me now, it will be difficult for me to kill him. Intelligence is extremely important in the battle between aliens. Suddenly, Jiang Yi thought of something. You mean, without knowing the abilities of Deng Shentong and other members of the Tianxin team, it's impossible for them to be killed so easily? Yang Xinxin glanced at him and smiled. At worst, we can always escape, right? Jiang Yi thought of Deng Shentong's ability. He knew that Deng Shentong could manipulate light, which was one of the best abilities for concealing attacks and escaping. If a captain was determined to escape, it would be absolutely difficult to kill him unless the other party was an Epsilon-level alien. But did the other party have an Epsilon-level alien? According to the feedback from Zhu Zheng and others, it obviously does not exist. If such a person really exists, Eclipse Moon can completely flatten the entire Neon Islands first, and then clash with China. According to the intelligence, they cannot directly confront the Kanto boss, Izumo, organization in Kanto. Jiang Yi murmured, but there are aliens with prophetic abilities among them. With this ability, can it be explained that Deng Shentong and his abilities are predicted? Yang Xinxin tilted her head and smiled slightly. Brother, if that alien with prophetic abilities can really predict the opponent's abilities, then I think she must be at the level of Epsilon. Because in a duel between aliens, the influence of the first-hand intelligence on the battle situation exceeds 30% and even exceeds 50% in group battles. They have such an ability. Why didn't they kill Izumo in Kanto? Jiang Yi put down the chopsticks in his hand involuntarily. He had not thought about these questions carefully before. However, after hearing Yang Xinxin's analysis, he gradually felt a creepy feeling in his heart. You mean there's a traitor in Blizzard City? Jiang Yi looked at Yang Xinxin and said in disbelief. I don't really want to believe it, Jiang Yi said. Zhou Kur also said, there will be a traitor in Blizzard City? This is unlikely. What can they gain if they cooperate with the Ronin? Others also expressed their disbelief in this matter. Yang Xinxin said calmly, although this matter sounds outrageous, no matter from which angle to analyze, the strength of the Jiangnan district is absolutely superior to the Ronin organization. Therefore, if we analyze it from ordinary logic, we naturally won't think that there is a traitor in Blizzard City. But what if we think about it from another angle? Could it be that someone in Blizzard City deliberately used the Eclipse Moon to deal with the Celestial God Squad? As far as I know, the inside of Blizzard City is not a monolithic entity. Jiang Yi's words instantly reminded Jiang Yi. The Deng family has very high prestige and power in Blizzard City. Deng Shentong, firstly, is the successor of the Deng family, and secondly, there are rumors that the Deng family intends to promote Deng Shentong to the position of Zhu Zheng's successor. After all,
In the end times, life and death are unpredictable, and no one knows how long Zhu Zheng can live. Moreover, it is always necessary to plan ahead and train a group of successors for Lao Zhu. This is to prevent accidents from happening, similar to the ancient system of crown princes. At this moment, Jiang Yi's thoughts in his mind became even more confused. If you think about it in that direction, the situation will be much more terrifying and serious. Because Jiang Yi has no idea how many factions there are in Blizzard City. There is even a possibility that Zhu Zheng himself wants to eradicate Yang Xinxin. After all, while he is still sitting in his seat, someone has set his sights on his throne. This kind of power ambiguity is very subtle. Chapter 698 Yang Xinxin asks for a fight. Yang Xinxin's thinking ability opened a new door for Jiang Yi. He never thought that there would be a traitor inside Blizzard City. Even if there was a power struggle, no one would be so crazy as to cooperate with Eclipse. However, excluding all the impossibilities, the one left at the end, no matter how incredible it was the truth. In fact, Jiang Yi couldn't figure out why the God team was destroyed so easily. Even if they couldn't win, it would be okay to escape, right? At least Jiang Yi didn't spend too much effort to kill the 4 eclipses. This is certainly related to his strong strength, but the members of the God team are not just eating dry food. Then, the most likely explanation is that all of their information was leaked to Eclipse in advance. Therefore, they were restrained in the battle. And no one noticed Jiang Yi, a stranger from the outer city. This allowed him to take advantage of the loophole and achieve the most brilliant results. Jiang Yi fell into silence. It was too complicated. These things were too complicated. He couldn't figure it out. He didn't intend to ask about other people's affairs. But now, he is also in it. Will he be implicated and stabbed in the back? Seeing Jiang Yi's tangled expression, Yang Xinxin continued to analyze the situation. Brother, Zhu Zheng wants you to be the captain and lead the new investigation team, right? Have you ever thought about why? Jiang Yi looked at Yang Xinxin and said, because my ability can help them deal with Eclipse. And from the previous encirclement and suppression campaign, I am very strong. Yang Xinxin nodded. Of course there is an element of this aspect. Strength is very important. After all, some people in the region really want to harm Yang Xinxin, and they have already achieved their goal. Then, they don't really want the region to lose to Eclipse. So next, no one will make trouble in the process of encircling Eclipse. And the person leading the team, in addition to having a certain strength, must also have a characteristic that is not to threaten the power of the top. After all, the local aliens in Blizzard City, as long as they have enough strength, must have a corresponding identity. At this point, whoever defeats Eclipse and saves the face of Jiangnan region and even the entire Huaxu country, his reputation will quickly rise to an incredible level. And that person may become Zhu Zheng's successor. And in Blizzard City, multiple forces are restraining each other and no one wants others to take the credit. Jiang Yi said thoughtfully, so, you push me, a stranger from the outer city, to the front, right? I don't have any foundation in Blizzard City. Even if I complete this mission, it will not pose any threat to the power of the top. Besides, Jiang Yi suddenly smiled. I have always refused Blizzard City's solicitation. This shows that I am a person who does not yearn for power or Blizzard City. Even if I complete the task and become a hero in people's minds, they can still let me stay in Tianhai City. I see. Jiang Yi himself is not stupid. After Yang Xinxin's analysis, he figured out some things at once. This muddy water is really not easy to wade through. Jiang Yi sighed. Yang Xinxin smiled and said, actually, brother, you don't have to worry so much. Because in my opinion, if that's the case, you will be safer. Because only if you serve as the captain of the Tengu team, Blizzard City will reach a relatively peaceful state, and the major forces in the dark will reach a consensus and will not trip each other up. Jiang Yi shrugged. I hope so. Anyway, I have thought about it. This task is very challenging. If the situation is not good, I will run away and save my life first. He is a bachelor. The main reason is that Jiang Yi has a clear understanding of himself. He did not think he was righteous just because he had awakened powerful abilities and was better at fighting. There were too many things involved in the Eclipse incident, just like a huge roulette wheel. Everyone in the roulette wheel could become a victim. You must take every step carefully and not be blinded by passion. Yang Xinxin lowered her head and smiled mysteriously. Since you are worried, take me with you this time. With Shinshin here, I can also help you with ideas, right? The little witch talked for a long time before revealing her real purpose. Only when Jiang Yi needed her, she could stand by Jiang Yi and show her abilities. Jiang Yi took a deep look at Yang Xinxin. The little girl's thoughts were written on her face, without any concealment. After thinking for a while, Jiang Yi said, "You have never experienced a real battlefield. People will die on the battlefield, and I can't even guarantee that I can always be by your side to protect you. Do you understand?" Although Yang Xinxin has awakened her superpowers now, Jiang Yi is still unclear about the effect of her abilities. Jiang Yi couldn't even think about what would happen if an 18-year-old girl like this appeared on the battlefield. Yang Xinxin said to Jiang Yi seriously, "Xinxin won't cause any trouble to her brother. Don't treat Xinxin as a child, and this time, it will be safer if you have your own people around you, isn't it?" "Uncle, you also spoke up at this time." He slapped his thigh and suggested seriously. "That's right, Jiang Yi. The people in Blizzard City may not be trustworthy, so it's safer to use our own people. Let me go with you." Jiang Yi waved his hand hurriedly. "Don't make a fuss, don't make a fuss. This time the opponent is not a joke." Even Blizzard City has carefully selected the elite to participate in the battle. Let me think about this matter again. He felt that he really needed Yang Xinxin by his side. In terms of brains, Yang Xinxin was much more useful than him. Jiang Yi's intelligence was enough for small situations, but he was obviously involved in a lot at the moment. Moreover, Yang Xinxin was born in the upper class and had more exposure to those things than him. He had to find a way to fight, and he had to be entangled in the undercurrents of Blizzard City. He really didn't have that much energy. On the other hand, bringing Yang Xinxin with him could take the opportunity to observe her abilities and cultivate her combat capabilities. At worst, Hua would be responsible for protecting her. After dinner, Jiang Yi chatted with everyone for a few more words, all of which were to ask them not to go out recently and to pay attention to the movements in Tianhai City. Then, he pretended to go back to his room to rest. But he quietly came to Yang Xinxin's room. Yang Xinxin was sitting on the fan's princess bed, looking up at him coquettishly. "Brother, I knew you would come. This is your own choice, so you have to know what will happen." Jiang Yi took a deep breath and then took out a gun from his pocket. Chapter 699, Advanced Preparation. Jiang Yi took out 2 guns and handed them to Yang Xinxin. "These 2 guns have little recoil, so you should have no problem using them. But you still need to practice hard. You don't need to be a good shooter, just use it for self-defense. One is loaded with ordinary bullets, for ordinary people. One is loaded with origin bullets, for aliens." Yang Xinxin happily took the guns. Jiang Yi gave her weapons, which meant that he would take her with him. In front of Jiang Yi, Yang Xinxin very skillfully disassembled the gun, checked the inside and the magazine, and reassembled it after confirming that there was no problem. Seeing Jiang Yi's surprised look, Yang Xinxin smiled and said, "In fact, I have been practicing shooting all the time. This kind of thing, I don't need my brother to remind me. I can do it too." Jiang Yi couldn't help laughing. "You really have been planning for a long time." He touched his chin, and his eyes swept over Yang Xinxin's petite and cute body. Yang Xinxin looked shy. "Why don't you stay here tonight?" Jiang Yi was stunned for a moment, then shook his head and said with a smile, "Stop it. When we get to Blizzard City, I'll get you a set of suitable combat uniforms." Yang Xinxin's legs had just recovered, and her physical fitness was not very good. At that time, he would ask Zhu Zheng to get a set of black combat uniforms for Yang Xinxin to wear. His people had to solve the problem of safety, like him. "Let Hua follow you at that time, and it will be responsible for protecting your safety. I will try my best to take you with me on the battlefield. But if you encounter a powerful alien, stay away from me." Jiang Yi carefully told Yang Xinxin the details that needed to be paid attention to on the battlefield. This made Yang Xinxin's eyes more gentle, like water melting. "Brother, you are so kind." The next morning, Jiang Yi called people from several major base forces to his home. He told Xiao Honglian, Xing Tian, and Qin Jingguan about the encirclement and suppression of Eclipse. The faces of the three people changed drastically, and they were all very worried. Jiang Yi said to them, "It's good to know how to be afraid. For the next period of time, stay in the base obediently, especially you." Jiang Yi turned his head and looked at Qin Jingguan. "If the enemy wants to attack Tianhai City, it is likely to be through the sea. So your people need to guard the coastline." Qin Jingguan was a little nervous. "I will have people keep a close eye on the sea. It's not easy for them to come from the sea. After all, our troops are patrolling on the sea." "Oh." Jiang Yi raised his eyebrows. He had never heard of this. Qin Jingguan said, "I don't know if it is the navy of Jiangnan or Donghai that will patrol along the coast. We have encountered it when we went out to sea." Jiang Yi said strangely, "If there is a navy patrol, why can the people of Eclipse come across the sea?" Qin Jingguan explained, "Under such an environment, the Navy's patrol is only to prevent large overseas fleets from invading the sea. If it is a smaller target, it may be missed." Jiang Yi thought of the witch with the ability of prophecy in Eclipse, and understood. The other party should have used this ability and the Navy's omissions to successfully pass through the defense line. After all, the present is different from the past. Braving the extremely low temperature, the patrol of the Navy has become much more difficult. It is impossible to defend the entire long coastline of the southeast coast. Jiang Yi looked at the three people and earnestly warned them. Linhai City has been destroyed, and Jiangning City is also close to destruction. I don't want Tianhai City to repeat the same mistake, so you should be more careful. Jiang Yi could only do this. If something really happened in Tianhai City, he would definitely give priority to the people in his shelter. As for the three major bases, he could only say, "Let it go." The three people nodded like pounding garlic, and they were more alert in their hearts, and they did not dare to be careless. After the three of them were ready to go back, they would immediately transfer all their industries into the shelter. No external actions would be carried out in the short term. At this moment, Xing Tian suddenly thought of something. He said to Jiang Yi, "Then, do we need to take care of other small organizations in Tianhai City?" Jiang Yi glanced at Xing Tian and asked in surprise, "When did you become so kind?" "There are indeed some small forces in Tianhai City, but after Yuan Kongya's purge, there are basically few people, and they can't make a difference. They just barely make a living." Xing Tian smiled. "If it was someone else, I wouldn't ask, but that's your old acquaintance." "My old acquaintance?" Jiang Yi shook his head and was about to laugh, but suddenly, the shadow of a person appeared in his mind. He looked at Xing Tian suspiciously. "The person you are talking about, is it Li Jian?" Xing Tian nodded. "Yes, it's him." Jiang Yi's eyes were a little nostalgic. Before the end of the world, Jiang Yi and Li Jian worked in the same company. Li Jian was the director of the finance department, and he was a small supervisor in the warehousing department. The two didn't have much intersection. But from the bottom of his heart, Jiang Yi admired Li Jian very much. He is one of the few people who can still retain his humanity in the end times. That is, a good person in the traditional sense. Jiang Yi couldn't do that, but that didn't mean he didn't admire him. If life wasn't forcing them, who would be willing to fight and kill for a chance to survive? Jiang Yi asked, "How are Li Jian and the others now?" Xing Tian said, "After the demise of the Snow Worship Sect, Li Jian and several other people from the Snow Worship Sect joined forces to form a small organization that gathered the survivors of the Snow Worship Sect. There are probably about 30 to 50 people." Jiang Yi sighed. "This guy always likes to do these kind things. It makes everyone else look like a bad guy." After thinking for a while, Jiang Yi said to Xing Tian, "Let them join your organization. After all, the population of Tianhai City is declining. After gathering them, you will have more manpower." Jiang Yi had spoken, so Xing Tian naturally nodded in agreement. Blizzard City. Gao Changkong's return made the situation delicate again. Zhu Zheng praised Gao Changkong greatly and expressed the hope that he would make more achievements in the next mission of encircling and suppressing Eclipse Moon. Almost everyone in Blizzard City had determined that Gao Changkong would be the leader of the third encirclement and suppression mission. At this time,
Gao Changkong was highly expected by many people. And what was Gao Changkong doing? He ignored the congratulations of his colleagues, but as soon as he returned to Blizzard City, he took his men to District E in the city. This was the area with the worst quality of life in the entire Blizzard City. The people living here were all engaged in the lowest level of manual labor. Chapter 700 Ambition. The next day after returning, Gao Changkong brought his girlfriend Gu Man and Deputy Captain Jiang to Area E. They drove a large truck filled with food, coal, and other necessities exchanged with points. Their arrival made the people in this area very excited. This place is not a slum. Blizzard City still provides good guarantees for the lives of ordinary residents and will not let them starve or freeze. The residents who can stay in Blizzard City are all elites in the past society. Even some people engaged in the service industry were the best in the past. However, they have families after all. Some families rely on the labor of one person to support 2 or 3 people, which makes the living supplies a little stretched. In Area E, this situation is most obvious. Gao Changkong is a person who walked out of Area E. Even though he was once a glorious basketball superstar and the economy was very rich, after the Doomsday, his ability could not bring much contribution to Blizzard City. Therefore, he once lived here for more than a month. After awakening his supernatural powers, he joined the city guards with his extraordinary supernatural powers, and then joined Yang Xinxin step by step and became one of the captains of the investigation team. So every time he came back from a mission, he never forgot to come to the place where he used to live and send some daily necessities to the people in District E who had helped him. After Gao Changkong arrived at the community, he was warmly welcomed by the people. Guman smiled and asked everyone to line up and then receive daily necessities. There were no useless sundries, all of which were key supplies for survival. At this time, nothing can be more touching than heating resources and food. In the crowd, an old man from the Mediterranean who had received the supplies looked at the food and coal in his hands and looked at Gao Changkong, who was carrying the supplies with gratitude. It would be great if Captain Gao could be the commander-in-chief of the Jiangnan district in the future. As soon as he said this, everyone around him nodded in agreement. Yes, Captain Gao is kind-hearted and knows how to pity ordinary people like us. If he became the commander-in-chief, we wouldn't have such a hard life. Guman heard this and raised a proud smile at the corner of his mouth. She gathered her hair and turned to look at the man who was busy carrying supplies on the train. Who would have thought that the captain of the investigation team, a well-known big shot in Blizzard City, would often do such hard labor? Gao Changkong heard people's discussions and laughed. Don't say such things. I just did some insignificant things, and you don't have to flatter me too much. Zhu Shui has made Blizzard City very good. At least everyone can live a stable life. A woman in the crowd lowered her head and said gloomily, "Is it really like a stable life?" Jinling had a population of 15 million at the beginning. After the end of the world, less than 2 million people were selected to enter Blizzard City. Later, if you lose your ability to work due to various problems, you will be ruthlessly expelled. She took a deep breath and tried not to let her emotions break down. Because she thought of her parents, a couple in their 70s, who were driven out of Blizzard City for this reason. Gao Changkong fell silent. This kind of thing is really helpless in the end times. Limited resources can only support a limited population. Otherwise, the entire Blizzard City will collapse and everyone will die together. In the future, the world will slowly get better. Please believe it. Gao Changkong told everyone with a resolute look. His eyes inspired many people and gave everyone confidence. It would be great if Captain Gao could be the commander. Although Zhu Shui is not bad, he still has to be coerced by those upper-level forces. After all, we civilians still have a hard time. But not everyone is called Gao Changkong. When several women said this, they immediately pulled the children next to them and taught them to learn from Gao Changkong. Did you see? Even if you are just an ordinary person, you can still change your fate. Captain Gao, like us, has lived in District E. But now he has become a big shot, right? The children have long been tired of hearing such words, because their parents use Gao Changkong as an example to give them almost every day. Gao Changkong is also very familiar with the scene, So after distributing the supplies, he asked again if the community needs help. After being busy for a long time, he finally finished the things here. He, Gu Man, and Ji Yushin drove to Area A and found a cafe to rest. Where the poor live, there are only cold, honeycomb-shaped residential buildings. And where the rich live, it is almost exactly the same as before the end of the world. You can enjoy all kinds of food, and even luxury goods can be bought at a cheaper price. The three of them ordered coffee and desserts and chose a seat by the window to sit down. The clerk's attitude towards them was particularly respectful, and the look he gave Gao Changkong was full of the love of a little girl. Even though this female clerk is already a 32-year-old mother who doesn't have a girlish heart. She is the kind of person who can bring her husband and children, the type who wears a wedding dress to watch an idol concert. Unfortunately, Gao Changkong sat next to Gu Man, a woman who easily makes people of the same sex feel inferior. After the coffee came, several people started chatting in their spare time. Ji Yushin leaned on the rattan chair and said with a smile, "We just came back and thought we could rest for a while. But the higher-ups asked us to do the mission again. This Jiangnan region really can't do without us." Gao Changkong took a sip of mocha and smiled slightly. "It's just because we happen to be free. If other investigation teams came back, they would also be responsible for this mission." Gu Man looked at Gao Changkong's profile and smiled. "This is called coming early is not as good as coming at the right time, right?" Gao Changkong couldn't help but sighed. "Yes. Sometimes it's really luck. If we caught up with the mission in Tianhai City, then..." The three of them couldn't help but sigh. Who could have imagined that a simple task of clearing zombies would actually encounter an alien of the Ypsilon level? Bian Junwu was killed, and the Black Robe team suffered heavy losses. Even if Gao Changkong possessed very powerful abilities, he could not make up for the gap between him and Ypsilon in his awakened state. Ji Yushin looked around, and there were not many people in the cafe. He put down the cup in his hand and whispered to the two of them, "Captain, Sister Gu, once we successfully complete this mission, the Samsara Squadron will become the leading existence among the 6 major investigation teams. By then, our prestige will reach an unprecedented height. After all, this is to drive out foreign enemies." Gao Changkong smiled slightly. "How can it be that simple? The people above will not give me such a great credit so easily." Dear viewers, this video ends here. I have put lots of efforts to bring this exciting story to you. Please like and comment on the video for more reach, and subscribe if not already. We'll come up with last part soon. Thanks.